On the website?
I was on the
That's
website.
a great one.
There's a golf shirt. It's a nice
That's a
stuff.
great one.
Nike.
Oh, you saw our store?
Yeah.
Let's
All right.
support all the
Gonna order
support student scholarships.
Expenses are $50 a shirt.
All the
No, you
profit
should.
goes to student scholarships.
Totally.
Help a guy out.
I love it. Perfect.
I appreciate it.
It's like you have to have a whole mask closet. Mask drawer, I guess. Yeah,
You go in my basement, you just see like this mass hanging from Kerry, like in our basement.
it's crazy.
You put in a regular one, I hand wash.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put it
No,
on.
they're the dry fit, just wash dry it.
Yeah.
The dry fit doesn't shrink. I got a box of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just grab one.
Did anyone request, how you welcome on them?
Yeah, I'm actually a bunch, Vanessa was sending out a ton today.
Oh, that's great. Good.
I brought North, I brought one day, it was small, one big one, I just gave it to the reps. I said, give them the reps, and if they see them,
How many did we get? Like 300?
about 500.
Oh, 500. Yeah. That small, medium, it doesn't fit on these.
It says it, this fits like.
You don't
I gave
like
it to
it.
Kristen.
Phil can put it on your body.
Why? It's
She's
certain way.
I have like 100 things in my.
So she's like, I'm like, just stand there.
Like this is so sick.
That's awesome.
What shirts you got?
Oh, I know.
That's what I meant.
I know.
Would you mind? I feel like I go there to be a thought for someone else, but I don't think I'm going to spend it. Now I'm like football.
Better.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Veterans Day. Well,
I can do it, so I said I'm gonna definitely do it.
Yeah.
like for the bills, I have like that sweatshirt or like SCJ things that I
I'll feel terrible.
Oh, okay.
So something like that. I have bills on them.
Is there-
Yeah. Well, we can get an SCJ then. That's cool.
Before we rise for the pledge and a moment of silence, I'm just going to turn it over to Mr. Coggins for a moment.
A little over a week ago, we lost a very dear friend of the Sachem community and a dear friend of mine, Mr. Sal Nicosia. He was friends with many people who are here in this room tonight, and you know that he was a presence in this school district. He never received any compensation for doing anything that he did for this school district and for many of the things that he did in this community. The man spent almost his entire life working in public education and private education and continuing to do that out of the goodness of his heart until the day that he actually died. 92 years he spent on this earth. It was an honor to know him, and I think after speaking with many of the people in this community, they felt the same way. So tonight, for our moment of silence, we want to remember Mr. Sal Nicosia.
If everyone could please rise for the pledge and our moment of silence for our friend, Mr. Nicosia. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Pelletieri for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to start by just congratulating the board, the community, these schools. It took 6 months, but we made it. We are here. Our schools opened. From all I heard and saw, and our team going out to visiting all the schools, we saw incredible excitement amongst our youngsters returning to school for the first time since that fateful March 13th day. We saw incredible excitement amongst our teachers as well, welcoming our youngsters back. Could not be prouder of this school community. Everyone, I have to be careful. I'm just going to say everyone, because if I start naming groups and leave a group out here or there, I will get emails. So I want to say everyone did an incredible job getting our staff, our students back where they belong in our schools. Very cute piece I saw in the news on News 12 up at Cayuga. They interviewed some children and some parents, just so excited to be back, and to hear that quote, best day ever from one of our kids, just gave me chills. It was really exciting to get through that time, and just happy that we are here. We made it with K-5, all of our kids in our hybrid model 6 through 12, and our remote model as well. And I'll talk a little bit about remote in a minute, but I want to just thank everyone. I see some of our teachers, our SCTA members here tonight, and all of our staff for the incredible job they did getting us to this point, and keeping us here, and knock on wood, and just continue to get at it each day. I'm very happy with that. I'm very proud. If I could continue, I do want to talk a bit about remote instruction. Is that all right?
Sure. Did anybody have any questions about the reopening before we kept going? Okay.
Thank you. The biggest concern I have right now, I'm hearing from teachers, principals, administrators, my office, the cabinet, board, everybody in this community, and rightfully so. We need to work on our remote model. It is not where we want it to be. We are concerned about it. We have met incessantly about it. We have discussed it. I have spoken with SCTA President Phil. I've been here, I think, today's my 16th day here. I've spoken to Phil 15 of those 16 days. And I'm not saying that to be witty. That's true. Phil, is that right? It's true. Yeah, including Sunday. So my wife's already jealous. But I'm being a little lighthearted about that. This needs to get fixed. We need to fix this. And I spoke to him again about it today, and I looked him in the eye. I said, I need your help. We need to fix this. So a lot of people say, I know you're trying. I know you're trying. Well, I don't come from trying. There is no try. There is only do. Other people have said that. I think Yoda from Star Wars said that. But I'm serious about that matter. We can keep trying all we want. We need to do this. So I have had conversations with many people. We have a lot of items on the table. We have a menu of things that we're going to try and approaches. Ms. Hines has done a great deal of work around this for me, calling parents personally, speaking with staff. Everyone in the office has had those conversations with people. I get snippets. I get once in a while, I get an email that says, this is working. We finally got in. We got a call. I was in the wrong Google Classroom. I had the wrong code. Whatever it is, it's working for me now. But for every one of those, I'm getting 10 more that says, this is not working for me. I think my child needs to come back. I don't know what's happening. You're not communicating enough with me. And so I accept that. We need to fix that. We need to do that. And so I'm working very hard at doing that. Again, everything is on the table to try to improve that. We have to be conscious of the fact that we are in a budget crunch, that the governor has promised 20% cuts. So I can't just run out and spend the good taxpayers of this district's money. We have to be very conscious of that. So we're trying to do a lot with very limited resources, and it is not simple. I read a study tonight, a national study on remote teaching across this country. 17% of the people who responded were happy with the remote learning that their child is receiving. So it's not a problem that is only in Sachem. It's across this nation. But I do care about the rest of the nation, but I care more about what's happening right here. And so we will be on it. We will continue to discuss it, and we will get better at it. I think.
Does anyone have any questions about the remote plan?
About that?
Good. Go ahead.
And lastly, I want to talk about something that's been disappointing to me as well, and that is the decision to delay sports. Section 11 met last week, just days before the start of the 21st, the start of what might have been a fall season. They voted to delay the season till January 4th. I wish there was more that could be done around that. As a coach, a current coach, I volunteer my time to coach basketball, Little League, as a former high school track coach, as an athlete myself in high school and college, what sports do for our kids. They are incredibly important. The character growth, the development that goes on there, the teamwork, the camaraderie, what they do for us as youngsters, and the growth that happens there on those competitive playing fields. Really important that we have that. So while saddened that happened, I'm glad it wasn't canceled completely. It is delayed. I wish that weren't the case. I know we'll talk in here probably for people in the community around that issue, but that is the fact as of this time, and that is what we see for the foreseeable future.
Any questions? Okay, Rob and then Meredith.
You know, to be honest with you, when I had learned that Section 11 was canceling and postponing, I can't tell you how disappointed I was with that organization. To 9 days before kids were supposed to get, or 10 days before the kids were supposed to get out there and actually be able to socialize with their friends and be part of a group and work on the social emotional piece that's been missing for so long. I can't tell you how disappointed I was with that. I know there's nothing we can do as far as a district, other than the fact that me personally, when I'm disappointed with something, I truly believe in sending a message to that any organization, not just Section 11, about how disappointing and what a letdown something like this did for our kids. Kids were looking forward to the season, to being able to get back out there and being able to work as a team and start to rekindle those relationships that were kind of shelved for 6 months. You know, not being able to see their friends and whatnot. And I know that the season was postponed and not canceled, but when you look at the time frame that these kids will have, and knowing this district, you know, the amount of field space that we need to be able to accommodate, the number of sports that they would have to run, it's going to be a challenge. There's no question about it. These kids have given up a lot. Okay, they've given up a tremendous amount over the last several months, and like I said, to be able to just pull the plug, 10 days before, was really disheartening, in my opinion. And me, for one, I would be in favor of this board putting together a letter of disapproval and disagreement, with that decision with such short notice to our kids. And I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but certainly I would want to do something like that. In years past, when we had to lose stuff, when we had to be forced to have to cut clubs, and our kids have nothing to do at the school, I could tell you that firsthand. Kids were getting into trouble, both in school, outside of school. We saw an increase in crime with the law, kids getting in trouble with the law. We saw disciplinary action. We saw kids fighting. We saw kids congregating at people's homes and experimenting with alcohol, with drugs. And this was in my opinion, was a very, very poor decision to take an opportunity away from kids that possibly could have been, done successfully. I mean, we have a governor that I don't always agree with, but he acted in a very, very cautious manner. I don't say throughout the whole process, but recently he's been very cautious in his decisions and opening things in restaurants and so on and so forth. So for him to put his blessing on it, and for the Department of Health to put their blessing on it, to say, look, we can do it as long as there's safety precautions set up, and as long as kids are conducting themselves and working as a group in a specific manner. And then to have Section 11 pull it away, once again, I can't express how disappointed I was. And I don't know if the board is in favor of putting a letter together, but certainly I would want to move in that direction.
Meredith?
So as the mother of two athletes, I'm not saying that sports is the end-all be-all, but I am saying that sports is the end-all be-all for some children. To take away sports the way that they did, especially so soon before the season was supposed to start, after it was promised, after it was postponed, to take it away from these children who have suffered so greatly in a mental capacity is horrific. And I agree with Rob. We absolutely, Sachem has always been a leader, and it is time for us to lead again. We need to stand up. We need to tell Section 11 that this is unacceptable, and it is unacceptable. I understand that reasons that things are decided, and believe me, as a board member, I have made some heart-wrenching decisions that I really wish I hadn't made. And I know that everything is sat down and thought about and gone through. If we were the only place that was trying to put sports back on the page, I would say we can't do it, but we're not. There's plenty of other places that are playing. They're being smart. They're being safe. My children wrestle. They play football. Those are sports that have a risk associated with them already. I'm willing to sign a waiver. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And it's not because I want my kids to be out there and the shining star. I want my children to have what sports brings to them. It shows them what leadership is all about. We need to start and we need to show them what leadership is all about. It shows them how to have a true team effort. You put a goal up there and you achieve that goal. There are some children that sports is all they have. There are some children that the only opportunity they will ever have to attend a college is through sports. And by taking fall sports away, you are taking that opportunity away from some children. There are some children that we are literally stealing their future right now by taking sports away from them. And that's not fair. And I can't sit here and say that there's nothing that can be done. A decision was made. No, we have to make some noise. We have to write that letter, and we have to go far beyond a letter. I can't sit here and watch children. I mean, my kids are 9th grade and 11th grade. The 11th grader, he already knows he doesn't want to go to college. He's going into the military. I'm not fighting for my children in this race. I'm fighting for the children who truly need to be on that field, like Rob said, to keep themselves out of trouble, to have their shot at going to college. This is an opportunity that some children only get through sports. And who are we to take that opportunity away from them? Who is anyone to take that opportunity away from them? It's just not right. Sorry.
Laura?
And I'll agree with Rob and Meredith. Sports is so important to our students, and I would agree with sending a letter, whatever we can do to get our athletes back on the field, whether it's just even for practice, whatever we have to do to get our teams back, to get our teams playing, to have them have that social and emotional bonding that only you can get through athletics is something I'm 100% in favor of.
One thing I wanted to add to what I was going to say is that working in schools for 29 years, I've watched students come to school proudly with their jerseys, whether it be soccer, football, volleyball, whatever the case is. There are many, many kids, more than we could probably even imagine, that the only reason they get out of bed in the morning, okay, to come to school is because they're part of that team. And my fear is that if kids don't have that motivation to wake up, okay, and come to school, because there is no sports for them, we're going to lose some of them. And that's the problem. I mean, I could tell you firsthand that if I'm having trouble with a kid in my class that happens to play for John Glenn, okay, and I let him know, well, I'm going to give Coach Shanahan a call, it straightens them up. It's amazing, okay, how important that aspect of sports is. And as I said, I mean, I can't express how disappointed I am. I think we definitely have to do something because it is impactful to many, many kids. You know, and then I just wanted to add that I forgot to say before.
Yep.
I'm going to share a very personal story, and I'm sorry if I embarrass my children by sharing it, but I think it needs to be shared. When I was in high school in Baldwin, go Bruins, field hockey was my life, and I had a fight with my coach. She kicked me off the team, and I dropped out of high school after that. So I can tell you right now what Rob just said is 100% accurate. You will lose children. You will lose a lot of children. They're losing their motivation every day as it is by not going to school every single day, by not seeing their teachers every single day, by not being involved every single day. We're already losing them. We're already losing their mental wellness, and we can't lose it anymore. And I'm telling you personally, when you're a sports person and that's what you have, and it's taken away from you in the middle of a pandemic, when we're all asking these children who don't have adult brains to think like adults and act like adults, you're going to lose a lot of them. And I'm really scared as to what's going to happen when we can't put them on the field, in the swimming pool, on the courts, whatever their sport is. And I'm not just talking about sports, I'm talking about clubs too. Everything has to count. These kids, every single one of them matter, and we're going to lose them.
Matthew?
Yeah, all right. So I'll just to agree with everybody that what you're saying. I think sports is a big part of my kids' school life and many others, of course. I just want to, totally a letter. Absolutely, I would support that big time. It boggles my mind that The club teams were all out playing sports. They're out on fields. They're indoors. They're playing volleyball. Adult leagues are all out playing. Adults are playing, getting to play, me included. I ran a summer camp all summer where the kids were all playing sports all day. Nobody got sick all summer. So it's frustrating, really frustrating.
Jim?
Yeah, not being a sports person myself, I certainly do understand the value of sports, especially here in Sachem. It's always been a big thing in Sachem, and I understand everybody's personal feelings about it too. But I kind of want to know, it sounds like everybody is saying Section 11 had no right to do this. Now, I don't know Section 11 from a can of beans. I don't really know anything about their organization other than I know that they are the spokesman or the head of Suffolk County high school sports. And they come up with a decision, I'm going to assume for safety reasons, maybe an overabundance of safety, to postpone the season. I have no problem writing, signing off on a letter that we're disappointed and we're sorry, we wish that this didn't have to happen. But I'm wondering, are we feeling on this board that they did something wrong, underhanded, or something that wasn't in the best interest of our students? It just seems to me that they are a sports organization, and even though they made a decision that none of us are very happy with, probably across the entire county, I would assume, but that they would do it for any other reason except for the safety and health of our children. So I guess what I'm just saying is, sure, we could write a letter of disappointment, but I don't know if we should be going after them with such language like this if they did something wrong. That's really just my point.
I think people make decisions sometimes, and we can make decisions and then realize that they were the wrong decision. We've done it as a board. We're looking at plans that have worked and haven't worked, and we're revising. I think that we're not saying that they did anything underhandedly. I think that they're just making a decision that I think is just not in the best interest of these children, because while it may feel to them that it was in the physical best interest, I'm much more concerned with every child's mental well-being right now, because I can tell you right now that this entire pandemic is affecting our children in a mental capacity that nothing else we've ever experienced has affected them. And I'm looking for them to look at the decision they made and perhaps revisit it, because there's so many other places that are playing sports. And just as Matthew brought up, have been playing and it will continue to play. I just feel like it's a decision that needs to be looked at again. And maybe if we write a letter and maybe other schools write letters and, maybe people start to really ask them. I mean, maybe we could even write a letter asking them what their decision was based on, because it can't be based on science and facts, because there's other places that are having no issue while they're all playing.
Jim?
Yeah, I wonder, Chris, if is there a legal basis for their decision to be challenged?
So you may or may not be aware that in Nassau County, a school district challenged their section for a similar decision. I would advise you as to what I think are the legal strategies or thoughts behind that in executive session, but that would be a discussion I'd want to have with you as a board, as legal counsel in confidence. But such a thing has occurred in our neighboring county. Whether I would endorse it or what the strategy is something I would discuss with you in exec.
Was there a result of that, or is that pending?
Pending, yeah.
I wrote something down, and it echoes a lot of what you all said already. But once again, we are late to the table and not leading in our community. We are the second largest school district on Long Island. We have 2 high schools and 3 middle schools that compete in the county. Last week, I shared with the board a letter that the Connecticut School District already wrote and shared in regards to the decision made by Section 11. However, this is our opportunity to stand up for the community that elected us to our positions. I respectfully request we write a letter on behalf of the board and for those board members in agreement to sign it. The letter would be supporting our student athletes, disagreeing with the athletic council's decision, and asking for the decision to be reconsidered immediately. Yesterday, the Big Ten, one of the largest athletic conferences in college, got back together and decided to reinstate their fall sports. It is my personal opinion that Sachem formally request a reconvening of Section 11 and overturn the decision they made, postponing sports until January 4th. We live in the strictest state in the country. After months of quarantining and mask mandates and the crippling effects that small businesses will feel forever, the governor finally said that schools can return. Districts didn't get together and decide to stay closed. Districts followed the hundreds of guidelines passed down by the state and found a way to open schools while still following the guidelines. When it comes to sports, however, the governor said sports can begin, but this time, instead of following the guidelines and finding a way, the athletic council ignored athletic directors and their own health and safety committee and decided to kick the can down the street and hope something changes in January. If the seniors last year felt that they lost everything, this senior group is looking at a far worse experience ahead of them. I believe it is our job to continue to advocate. And I do have a few questions, and I know that I don't want to put Ms. Trombetta on the spot, but as a member of the athletic council, of the ultimate body that made the decision, I do have a few questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
And maybe Chris can answer the first one, but I have no idea how Gary voted, and that's one of the reasons I asked him to be here tonight. But I think we should know how he voted. If he voted if he voted no to postpone, or did he abstain? Because I know there was no yes votes.
Chris, you want me to?
Yeah, I don't know
Whoever
that,
wants to
is there an actual vote by Gary? I don't think there's an actual vote cast or.
Gary is not on the athletic council.
But weren't the athletic directors polled, and didn't they, Kevin Marr from Newsday?
The athletic directors were polled on the first day. They went back and spoke to their superintendents, and based on the information they received from their superintendents, that's when it got voted to postpone.
So the
But
information
Gary
that's
is not
out,
on that.
the information that's out in the public that it was a 28-0 vote and
Is
24
incorrect.
abstained.
They're abstained. The people that abstained went back specifically so they could speak to their superintendents, as well as the people that voted no, wanted more information because they went to that meeting not knowing how their superintendents felt as a district.
Okay. It's my understanding that the Health and Safety Committee at Section 11, and you just cleared up the athletic directors, but the Health and Safety Committee recommended that Suffolk County allows sports before January 4th. Now, I know this is all behind closed doors, but, the athletic people
I'm
that
unaware
voted
of that.
no.
I'm not part of that committee at all.
Okay.
Even on the executive board, I'm not
Okay.
part of that committee.
All right, and I know Jim brought up health and safety, so it's my understanding, and I could be wrong, and that's why I'm asking. But somebody
If
on
I
the health
can
and
give you
safety
some of the
committee.
facts that I'm aware of, if you'd
Yeah.
like. So the reason that the Section 11 chose to postpone athletics is because the state already moved volleyball and football to the spring. Those two sports would not be playing. The only sports that would be playing were golf, swimming, tennis.
Field hockey.
There was questions on that. That wasn't 100%. Out of the 11 sections in the state, 4 postponed, and out of the others, 42% of those other sections, 42% of the school districts within those sections are not playing. They're opting out. So one of the main reasons Section 11 chose to postpone was equity for all. That way we weren't pitting one district against another. As far as practicing and being able to condition, that has been approved and that is left up to the school district at this point. Section 11 is leaving that up to the district. There's a guideline, return to play, that Shannon and Gary are going through. It is many, many, many pages. And one of the other reasons Section 11 chose to postpone is because right now we are not allowing any shared equipment. We're not allowing, because it's an extension. Athletics is an extension of school. It's not a club.
Yeah.
And based on the fact that we're not allowing our PE classes to share equipment and participate in sports and activities like that, they viewed it as an extension of that.
When you talk about equity for all, I'm confused by that because when Riverhead canceled all their sports, we weren't going to cancel the season because Riverhead wasn't playing. So it's not I mean, again, you're only one vote and you don't speak for everybody, but
A big
I'm just confused when people say, I've heard that term before.
Mhm.
And, if Riverhead's not going to play, then we should all just cancel because it's equitable. So,
Equity in many different ways. One of the main reasons is we are on a hybrid schedule, and most of the districts are. Who's getting those children back? And the students that would be able to come back would be the parents that were home and able to drive them. A lot of our students would not be able to get back for sports.
does anyone else have any questions?
Patty, when you say equity for all, is that equity across the different counties or equity within the county?
Within the county.
Within the county. So it's not that Section 11 was pressured by maybe other counties to maybe cut sports because maybe they were getting a lot of negative emails and negative attention as a result.
No, one of the main reasons that it was done so late is they were trying to be able to do this, but based on the information they received, I can tell you at the executive meetings, we had superintendents that are part of that. The executive director and the assistant executive director do not vote. This is based on athletic directors, principals, and superintendents.
The determination you said about sharing of some of the equipment, I'm assuming like ball, the volleyballs and the footballs and things like that. I thought that determination was made by the state that certain sports were not going to run for that reason. But when you look at soccer, they're kicking the ball. When you're looking at field hockey, they're hitting the ball. So I thought that determination to run certain sports opposed to not running other sports was based upon how much contact and how much sharing of the equipment would actually occur.
Right, and that's how it's categorized as a high risk, like football would be a high risk. I mean, right now, one of the main reasons is we have school districts that are shutting down for, COVID cases. The situation that Chris mentioned in Nassau, that district that is going after Section 8, they just had to shut down their middle school today. So it is something, once the clock starts, it starts. You can't stop it. So if you shut down for 2 weeks out of an 8-week season, you're almost halfway gone.
Yeah. The only concern I have is that to make an assumption that kids would not be able to get back to the sports when you have communities of people, neighbors, friends, family members that can get those kids back on opposite days that they're not in school. I think, in all honesty, they should have given it a chance, because people will do it. It's happening now. There's soccer tournaments, there's all different types of lacrosse tournaments taking place, and the kids are getting to the events. And I'm pretty sure had they run it at a middle school and high school level, somehow, some way, community members would have pitched in and got those kids to practices, home for practices, 2 games, so on and so forth. So I mean, to say that that's one of the reasons why they pulled it, they should have given it a chance, in my opinion. Okay, and let's see if it works. But yeah, it's going to happen. Classes are going to shut down, a quarantine is going to happen. But to say, well, we're just going to pull the plug because we're anticipating it's going to happen, give it a chance and see what happens. I don't personally think that you could run 3 sports. When you look at that last season, it's literally like 6 weeks. How could you run a baseball season, okay, or lacrosse season in 6 weeks? Even if even with the practices, you don't even have enough time to get all the games in 6 weeks. All of the other seasons are 8 weeks, but that last spring season, I believe it ended June 19th. When is graduation this year? We're gonna right from the field to the graduation ceremony. It's not realistic. It really isn't. So like I said, I'm disappointed. I don't know where the board stands, but certainly, Jim, I'm not saying that it was done deliberately, but I just think a little bit more thought could have gone into it. And if it was going to be done, it should have happened a long time ago, and not necessarily 10 days before the kids were looking forward to doing it.
Can I ask Rob? Yes, Rob, you made a statement, and I'm just curious about it. You said that they should have given it a chance to see what would happen. What do you mean by what would happen? Somebody get sick?
Well, just to assume, okay, that it's going to be a major issue, and we'd have to cut things, and sports would have to end mid-season. Okay, there's no proof that's possible that would have happened. We've seen sports run now for several weeks, and I haven't heard of a case in a youth league where kids had to be hospitalized as a result of playing. So
again, not to argue for them, because again, I don't know Section 11, but if their point is to keep kids safe, then it would kind of be dereliction of their duty to say, well, let me give it a shot and see what happens. I mean, I'm not arguing for them. I'm just saying it sounds to me like if they took that stance, for whatever reason, we've got to say the reason had to be health and safety. I think we'd all agree that they didn't just do it for some kind of underhanded reason. Then I would have to disagree that having a go at it to see what happens is not in the best interest of health and safety. That's all I'm asking.
My point is we have the lowest infection rate that we've ever seen, more than any state. At some time, you got to pull the Band-Aid off and let the kids at least be kids and play. And that's all I'm saying.
And Jim, and not to argue, I think you make a valid point. In all sports, there's an inherent risk. We drive an ambulance up to the turf field for football games. Like there's an inherent risk in sports, and parents make that decision with their child on whether or not to play. Some parents made a decision to send their kids back, some didn't. There's inherent risk in driving my car here tonight. There's no reason why they couldn't start. And it's my understanding, and I'm not going to speak for you or anybody else, but I've spoken to 6 athletic directors. It's my understanding that the majority of the athletic directors in this county wanted to postpone it maybe to October 10th, October 16th. They didn't understand the January date. They're upset that from their understanding, and it's the same 6 people, that the Health and Safety Committee that was put together, their recommendation was to let them play. I went to a rally yesterday at Section. Watching these kids, it's like impending doom. It's like watching a piano like float over their head and just waiting for someone to cut the cord and say, we're going to kick the can until there's no more time left and now your senior year is over.
I don't
somebody
want has to
answer for
explain
somebody
to
that
me
thought she was on the
then,
council.
if you're saying the Health and Safety Committee of Section 11 said, let them play. If the athletic directors in Suffolk County said, let them play, and certainly the parents and students that are athletes want to play. So then who is it that made the decision?
I guess that's my ultimate question is if all the school districts in Suffolk County are paying Section 11 to create schedules, to make sure that there's officials, to make sure that if we're really kind of their boss, why are they making the decision for us? Why aren't the individual school districts choosing
Alex,
what they want?
What I'm trying to find out is who is the they? Who's the they? You have
asking
Health
for
and
names
Safety
on the
Committee.
committee?
You had Health and Safety Committee. Where for them playing? You had athletic directors. Where for them playing? So who's the they that says, well, no, you're not?
The athletic council.
And who's part of the athletic
don't know.
council?
The athletic council, I do sit on that meeting. The athletic council is comprised of athletic directors, principals, and there's a business official on it as well. And I can tell you, Alex, that you are speaking for the 6, but the athletic directors are the ones that went back to their district to find out how they wanted to proceed, and that's how the vote was.
So if I
So the athletic
So that was the
council has
ultimate
made that
decision.
decision. Yes.
If I could jump in for a second here and kind of just steer us a little bit in terms of, I like the idea of the letter, but I don't want us to just write a letter and say, please revisit this. I want us to write a letter and come up with suggestions as to how we might improve this situation. So there was this October date, that's not much further than it was now. Maybe there's a November date, like maybe there is something we can do as a suggestion that would give them impetus for changing their decision, not just, I don't like your decision, let's change that decision. So why don't we talk about means by which we could do that? And we're lucky to have Patty here to have some insight and these conversations, and we can continue perhaps to rely on her. I don't want her to necessarily be the focus or represent Section 11 for sure. Yes, you did. I appreciate that. But I think, again,
It's
if
just
we come up with...
when you hear health and safety and you cancel golf. I mean, it doesn't get more socially distanced and safe. And I mean, you're canceling golf and tennis. It just doesn't add up. So, and then it turns to fair and equitable. Well, is it health and safety or is it equity? It can't, I don't think it could be both in every situation. And that's why I'm asking to write the letter, and Rob has asked and others have asked that it be reconvened and reconsidered, because these kids, I'm telling you, as a coach, looking them at their face, all they want to do is get in the gym. All they want to do is get on the field. And Rob has said it. Sending kids home at 2:00 is bad for everybody. It's just bad news. I mean, if it's safe for 7 hours, it's safe for 9. It's just my opinion, but that's
Chris,
just the way I feel about it.
I respect the fact that you want to put the letter together a certain way, but I'm upset with them. I'm disappointed with them, and
We should express that
I
without a
would
doubt.
want them to
Yeah.
revisit it, to bring sports back sooner if possible.
Mhm.
To revisit the idea of maybe touching base with other athletic directors to find out if they feel it's safe, and maybe revisit it, because there is nothing good is going to come from kids not having anything to do, and that's the problem I have. And like I said, so many kids live, breathe, and wake up in the morning just because they know they're going to get through the day, and they're going to participate in that sports. And in many cases, coaches have the ability, to affect the trajectory of that student by saying, "Hey, look, you know what? Your grades weren't good enough this week. I want you to work harder." And that kid works harder, and you're not going to have that now.
When I was a rookie teacher, I used to go to Mr. Demas, who was the varsity basketball coach, because I had a couple of kids that were a little in my class, and he set them straight every time. So yeah, I know exactly what you're saying and where you're coming from and how important that is.
And just real fast, I see Alan in the back there, and his son, who's a Sachem student, started a change.org petition, and there's close to 7,000 signatures on it in like 3 days. I mean, how many signatures would it take for people to get back together? How many boards, how many superintendents or athletic directors does it take to get people back together? I don't know. Matthew, then Meredith.
Yeah, just quickly, while Rob was just talking about kids going home at 2:00. We're talking about sports, and that's important to my family. But also something that I learned recently is that we're canceling all clubs. Which, are we going to talk about that? Because that's another. Not all kids play sports. Some kids are artists. Some kids are photographers or writers for the newspaper, and the clubs are important. So why are we canceling all the clubs? I don't understand.
Can I jump in on that?
Matthew, can we put that on pause? Let's finish this, and then I promise you that's on there. Meredith?
So I was actually going to ask about clubs also, but another thing is, Jim, part of what I want to bring to them is maybe they looked at it from a health and safety aspect, but sometimes you have to look at physical health and safety and mental health and safety. And sometimes the mental health and safety has to outweigh the physical risk. I mean, like Alex said, there is a risk in every sport. Some sports are much riskier than others, and the child and the parents choose that. But we have to ask them to revisit, because it's not necessarily the health and safety aspect of the COVID virus. It is the detriment that the thought of the COVID virus is going to do to the mental health and safety of every one of these student athletes. It's not just the seniors. The seniors are getting a real raw deal, but it's every athlete from middle school up. They look forward to it. They want it. Right now, let's be serious. Our children don't have much to look forward to. So if we can give them something, I mean, we have spent from March 13th, Friday the 13th, the most detrimental day in history for all of us. We have spent every day since then pulling something away from them, taking something away, taking something away. They are still children. As much as we've asked them to grow up during this pandemic, they still have immature children brains. Even at 18 years old, they're still not mature enough for us to lay on them what we have laid on them and then just keep taking it all away. And so, yes, the health and safety is a part of it, but they have to sometimes look at more in depth the mental health and safety.
I think what's important too, we talked about letter writing. So if there's anybody who's not comfortable with the entire letter, then I think it's important that you don't, it's your name and you're entitled. Yes.
Yeah, just for process on that, because we have discussed that and agreed as a board that I would assume that Chris will kind of get a letter together, come back to the board, we'll read it and then take a vote on it. And from what I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, what we agreed on is if the majority of the board is happy with the letter, it goes out from the board, the whole board. And we could vote, I'll vote, if we had a no vote, gets in the record. But the whole board, the letter goes out from the whole board. Isn't that what we all agreed on? Okay. All right. Correct. It's the whole board is behind the letter, and if anybody had a no vote, it's registered with Right.
But what I'd like is, I mean, that's still 2 weeks away. So I'd like to give him some parameters of where it is and see if we can get something approved for tonight. And if, yes, okay.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is that, and we've done this in the past, when we've sent letters back in 2013 up to the governor about the disappointment of the Gap Elimination Act, when there was a 9-0 board to sign it, a spot was created for every board member, because I think it sends a message that every single board member is in agreement. If we don't have a 9-0 and we have a 6-3 or a 7-2, then yes, let's do it from the Sachem Board of Education. But if we have a 9-0,
I'd like to see.
I don't think it's any harmful that every board member sign it.
I don't know if I'm going to disagree with that, because we already decided how to do letters. Otherwise, we're going to break protocol right away with this letter. The protocol that we all decided on in this board was to, if you had a disagreement and you were in the minority, Alex, I think it was you that made that request, that your negative vote would be recorded in the minutes. And that's how your negative vote. The letter, Rob, would be indicative of the entire board behind the whatever the letter is and to whoever it went, without individual signatures. It would just be the Board of Education from Sachem.
I think what Rob said is if in the case of a 9-0, in the case of a 9-0.
Is that what you mean, Rob? If all 9 were for it?
If all 9 people agree to it, okay, and everybody's in favor of it, I think it means a little bit more when they're looking at it and there's 9 signatures.
Okay, so if it
won, it would just say
if it's
Board
an
of
A1,
Education.
Sachem Board of Education.
Okay, I stand corrected. Sorry.
That's all.
Yeah. So we want to vote on that, or to at least start the letter and then we'll vote on the letter after. Chris, do you have a kind of an idea of where we want to go as far as our?
Yeah, I'm sure I can consult with the superintendent as well, and I have an understanding of what you're interested in.
Yep.
Put a draft together as we do, circulate it, understand your direction. Absolutely.
Now, the letter itself, we can vote that we're going to do it, and then Chris will get all the legal stuff written out. I don't think we need to wait 2 more weeks for Chris. If Chris gets it done in the next day, no pressure, Chris, then we can probably send it out right away if we all agree, right? Well, we voted on sending the letter in public. Isn't that what we said, that we were going to vote on sending a letter in public? But the actual legal words on it shouldn't have to wait another 2 weeks, because by then, how can you postpone a season 2 more weeks? Try to get a season going when you can't get a season going. Right, but I think it's not so much that, we're all in agreement, or whoever is in agreement right now is in agreement that we're going to write a letter in support of asking Section 11 to revisit their decision and possibly come up with X, Y, and Z solutions. So I think that would be something that we can vote on right now. And then if anybody said, I don't agree with that.
Yeah, if you're not in agreement of us writing a
Right.
letter that
It doesn't
says,
necessarily have to be
"Please
the-
reconvene and
No, I think we're voting on the process of putting
Right.
together a letter. If there's anybody that's opposed to it,
Say you're opposed
to it,
now.
and then we'll generate the letter and we'll just send it from the.
if you don't have an idea of what the letter is going to look like at this point, I don't know what to say.
Right, I think we all kind of have an idea.
I don't know what it's going to look like. Chris had mentioned something about coming up with some ideas to put in the letter to make them, let's say, push the season a little closer. Is that going to be in the letter?
Yes,
it is.
that's what Meredith just said.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. If we wait another 2 weeks to approve a letter in public session, then if one of the solutions that we come up with is the possibility of moving the season into October, then you just kind of defeated the whole purpose. I'm saying, I thought that what we were saying the last time is you agree with the generality of the letter that we're going to write, or you disagree with it. So we could vote 7-2 in agreement of a letter in support of X, Y, and Z.
Alex, can we just agree on a date now? Like,
Well, if it helps, what we'll do is we can vote on him writing the letter.
Right.
And if we have to have a special meeting tomorrow or the next day,
That's what I was just
and
gonna
we
say,
can
can't
read
we
it,
just
and
have
we
a
hold the
Zoom
special
meeting?
meeting, and we can zoom in,
Perfect.
and we
Can we
can
have
quickly
a
read
Zoom
it,
meeting?
and we can do it that way.
Excellent.
Good. All in agreement for him to write the letter, and then we'll vote on it after. Anyone have an issue with the letter itself?
No.
You said you have something you want to say? Yes, please, Bill, please. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
I try to make eye contact. Sometimes when people are wearing the
No,
mask, I don't pick up on the
I get
cue.
No, I'll just be brief. First of all, I want to be on the record as saying that I support sending the letter. I agree with everything that every one of you said. I do think I hate to eat up time. I'm not a waster of time. But it is important for people to understand what's going on. I have seen very few letters that have succeeded at getting things changed. And I think you all know that. Rob, you've cited many cases where we've written letters and it doesn't change. And here we are. Is anyone surprised that we've got kids in school at half capacity and that they canceled Section 11? It's not even remotely surprising to me. And the letter is, if I'm a betting man, I'm betting it changes nothing. I understand it vents our frustration. We had 8 people on this board, so that everybody understands. We had 8 out of 9 of us that wanted to open these schools at full capacity. That was completely thwarted. And it was thwarted for many different reasons that I won't go into at this point. Somebody wants to know, you can talk to me individually. I'll be happy to share that information with you. But here we are. This little stupid thing has prevented all of this. If we sit in school with these on, how the devil are they going to open up sports to kids who are breathing on one another, partially spitting on one another at times, drinking out of the wrong water bottle that's sitting on the sideline, whatever it is? It's hard to imagine how they're going to do that. But one thing is driving all of this, and you can be certain of that. And many of you mentioned it. It's fear. It's nothing but fear. And until all of us stand up and do bold things and push back against what's causing this, it will not change. You talk about what the children have given up. We've all given up. Every last one of us. And yes, it is stealing their education. I've been back in school now for 3 weeks. And I talk to the students about this. And what I hear out of the students, what a number of them told me in discussions when I asked them, what is it like to be in school with this every other day with a plastic shield around your desk? Where I teach, I'm referencing for the benefit of people who are listening to this. And the response I got from several students that others agreed with was, it's like being in prison. Walk on your side of the hall. Separate. Don't stand by each other outside. Student pulled in the parking lot, sat on the hood of his car to eat an egg sandwich in the morning. First day senior year, told, get off your car. You can't be here. You can't do that. We have given up so much, the adults and the children alike. Ladies and gentlemen, I know we all don't agree on everything here, but for those of us who do agree and think things have gone too far, this is just the beginning. You have to decide. Everything has inherent risk in it. Every last thing has inherent risk. We can keep on listening and keep on doing, or the 8 of us that wanted these schools open, we should have pushed and gotten these schools open. And there were impediments in our way to making that happen. We should have done it anyway and pushed and made it happen. Until we do, there will be no sports. Promise. There will be no sports. And things will not get better, and we may very well get shut down because one child gets COVID and that one child is asymptomatic and nothing happens to them. That's what we see. Nobody would respond like we're responding. Nationally, nobody would respond this way. But yet here we are, like a bunch of lemmings running off a cliff. I've never seen anything like it in my life, nor have you. Wake up. The people in this room, wake up, America. This is a disgrace. Our children are being harmed. Adults are being harmed. Livelihoods are being ruined. The writing's on the wall. We haven't even begun to see the damage. We're not getting that 20% reduction in state aid. I'm not betting that that's happening. It's highly unlikely. So if you're hoping it's going to happen, it's probably not. I give it 90% it doesn't happen. And when it doesn't happen, watch the cuts that follow and all of the other things that come along with it. The tax revenue is way down, as you know, not just in this state, but in other states and nationally. So we can't hold out hope on that.
Okay, good. We're going to go to letter F, approval of minutes for September 1st, 2020 and August 26, 2020. I don't have the page number tonight. I apologize. The printer was acting up. Can I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Baumann, second by Mr. Scavo. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. The visitor section. This part of the visitor section is for agenda items only. Each person wishing to speak will be afforded 3 minutes to make their comment. I'm just going to call them in the order that they were handed in. John Weston.
Thank you. Good evening, Superintendent Dr. Pelletieri, President Piccirillo, Vice President Wadua, members of the Cabinet, and Board Trustees. My name is John Weston. Many of you know me as the Vice President of the SCTA, but I'm also a 14-year English and broadcast journalism teacher, National Honor Society advisor, and Senior Trip Coordinator at North. Dr. Pelletieri, I thank you for your comments and your commitment to fixing the remote learning plan. But I'm here tonight because I believe the district has hurt its students and failed its teachers with its current hybrid and remote learning plan. I know how remote learning is supposed to look. I did it this summer teaching 10th grade English for Western Suffolk BOCES Regional Summer School on Google Meet for 4 hours each day from my basement. It wasn't ideal, but we had discussions, literary analysis, formative and summative assessments. It was a true remote learning plan and it worked. Coming into the school year in Sachem, we knew there would be challenges. But after 1 week of living this plan, I can tell you it is unsustainable. This year, like each school year, I started off with an activity I call I Wish My Teacher Knew. Since each school year is a blank slate, I encourage my students to tell me something about them that they want me to know. You'd be surprised how open and honest the kids get on the first day of school. For my hybrid and remote students, I posted this assignment to Google Classroom. Here is what one of my students wrote. I wish my teacher knew how hard it is being a kid these days. I wish my teacher knew how hard it is to learn from home. I wish my teacher knew how annoying it is not being able to go to school and be with my friends. To you, I say tonight that I wish my administration knew that this remote plan is hurting our kids, that we teachers want to make remote learning interesting and fun for them. We are teachers. We know how to create magic, but we need to be provided with the time and resources to make the magic happen. We have not been given adequate direction regarding our remote learners. We do not have the technology, the workspace, or the time in our days to teach our remote learners in addition to our in-person and hybrid students. On behalf of all Sachem teachers, I implore you to please give us the ability to teach all of our students. Give us the time and the resources we need to ensure the very best for all of our students. Thank you for your time and your commitment to the students, the teachers, and the staff in this district.
Thank you, John. Phil Barbera.
Good evening, Dr. Pelletieri, President Piccirillo, Vice President Wadua, District Cabinet, Board of Education, and Sachem community who's watching at home. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Phil Barbera. I am the president of the Sachem Central Teachers Association, but I'm also a proud 13-year science teacher, coach, and former science chair at Sachem North. You can't see the back of my shirt from where you're seated, but it says Sachem United. Reunited, because that was last year's shirt. Thank you. The teachers, our aides, and our TAs across the district were today, and we believe it sends a very clear message that everything that has pulled us apart for the past 7 months is starting to slowly fade away, and we are all reunited again right now with the same goal of reinventing our schools. I have been vocal here at board meetings, at meetings with district office, with my own members, and with building administration, that we absolutely do need solutions. I'm very pleased to hear that Dr. Pelletieri is acknowledging that our reentry plan, and especially our remote plan, definitely needs improvement. I was prepared to go into in-depth about all the areas that our plan is lacking. But Chris, I'll be honest, you kind of disarmed me a little bit with your opening remarks. But I wouldn't be honoring my role as the president of the SCTA and my role to support the staff and the students in this district unless I didn't take a moment to highlight some of the issues. I know you're going to try to push a live streaming experience, but let's please be honest with the community. We still have not been trained, and we don't on any of the equipment, and most rooms are still not set up and prepared to live stream right now. We also have not got confirmation that our live streaming and our internet system can even handle the load of having all these classrooms streaming at one time. Please support the staff. If you make this decision, we need all the support we can to make it work for our students. is not as simple as, hey, turn on a camera and, like John actually just said, we're just going to make magic happen. It's not that easy. We need to set reasonable expectations for the staff and for the students. We have to ensure that all of our students have the resources necessary to even have a live streamed experience. It's not going to be as easy as just we're going live. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but a board trustee has said in the past, and I'm paraphrasing, it's not a lie that we are not providing the best instruction to our students this year. District cabinet and board trustees, I'm here to say, so I'm really sorry to say this, but I have to agree with that trustee. And it hurts me as an educator to say that. I have to admit, I'm a little disappointed tonight. The passion and the time dedicated to the sports conversation, which is great coming from a coach, I wish I would have heard when Dr. Pelletieri was talking about the remote program and our academic program. Under our current plan, if you're a secondary remote student, you're just placed into a Google Classroom. And as of right now, we have no actual directive of how to instruct those students. It is breaking the heart of every educator in our district that Sachem would create a plan that does not allow us to teach our students effectively. When we ask the district, when will we be able to teach these remote kids, we get responses such as, when possible, maybe during your lunch. We need to double our efforts. I think this cabinet would agree. That's just unacceptable. I'm asking district office, which you've acknowledged tonight, Chris, and Dr. Pelletieri, I appreciate that. I'm asking you to please continue to reevaluate this plan because in its current form, we are failing our children and the staff that you depend on and these children depend on. Our children deserve better, a better academic experience, and our staff are professionals and they need the time and the support to reach all of our kids.
Mr. Barbera.
Yep. 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The SETA is ready and willing to do anything we can to please support the children of this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Cheryl DiPietro.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, getting back to sports. Good evening, board. I'm here tonight as a concerned parent with 2 boys in Sachem North High School who are multiple sports athletes, excellent students, and who love school. I would like to know how Section 11 came to its decision to cancel fall sports, despite the fact that current COVID data and science no longer supports these harsh cancellations and restrictions. This population or age group is not highly or even moderately susceptible to the past devastation that COVID caused to a mostly elderly and compromised population many months ago. Coach Caputo's leadership, along with his team, has reestablished Sachem North football, not only within the school, but within our community. Community has become very important to Sachem families, more so now. So on the back end of COVID, what assurances do we have as a community that there will even be a spring football season? I, as a nurse for over 21 years, do not see a light at the end of this tunnel, not because of COVID or my fear of COVID. I'm actually not afraid of COVID, but of the politics involved now from the top down. Many in the nursing community agree with me, all over Long Island. Anything less than an assured football season in the spring will be completely unacceptable to the Sachem community. In closing, the Sachem community will not take this lightly, and I hope you understand that. I appreciate everyone tonight that spoke up for sports, especially you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. DiPietro.
All right.
Jeff Nagel. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good evening, Dr. Pelletieri, President Piccirillo, Vice President Wadawa, the members of the cabinet and school board members. I'd like to ask you to allow Sachem Youth Soccer access to our Waverly Avenue fields. For over 40 years, Sachem Youth Soccer League has been the stewards of these fields and the local soccer community. Our volunteer family spends countless hours maintaining and improving the soccer fields, as well as providing a safe, structured sporting venue and outlet for all of these children of the district. Many of you spoke earlier about how strongly you felt about Section 11's postponement of school sports. Having team sports is critical for the social and emotional development of all of our athletes. The majority of our training staff are teachers as well, and understand the importance of the social and emotional component, as well as the physical development of these students, all of these students and athletes. I can say playing soccer gives my children a small slice of normalcy in these very abnormal times. Governor Cuomo approved youth sports. We have safety protocols in place created by U.S. Youth Soccer, Eastern New York Youth Soccer, and Long Island Junior Soccer League. We've been on these fields since they were donated to the school district 40 plus years ago. We've maintained them, developed all of the programs that happen there, and have had tens of thousands of district students come through those fields under our stewardship. And all we're asking for is the ability to continue that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have to wipe that microphone. Sorry. There's wipes there if you want to wipe the microphone down in between each use. If that, yeah. I know TV land, they're very critical sometimes and they see everything. So just make sure we.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name is Anthony Capuano. I come here in conjunction with Mr. Nagel. I am the newly appointed president of Sachem Youth Soccer League. So first and foremost, I wanted to thank you and also introduce myself to you all. I've been serving on the Sachem Youth Soccer League board for about 7 years now. I am a parent and community member. My youngest son is in 6th grade at Seneca, and my oldest son is in 9th grade at East. So just to reiterate what Jeff was asking, we're looking to get back to the field of play at Waverly Fields. And so many of you seemingly connecting with the importance of sports and the development of our children and the need for them to be back out there. I've sent up some supporting documentation and information to Alex this afternoon for you all to hopefully review and understand the guidelines and protocols that have been set forth by the state and our local soccer program. And strongly consider getting us back out on the field and those children back out on the field. So that's what we're here requesting. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lori Caliendo.
Just gonna wipe.
Please take your time.
Good evening, President Piccirillo, Vice President Wadawa, trustees, Dr. Pelletieri, and Cabinet. My name is Lori Caliendo, and I am the president of the Sachem Central Nurses Association. As the representative of the 23 registered nurses in our school district, I am here tonight to speak to you all regarding the concerns we have as healthcare professionals working in the school setting. As some of you may already know, as a group, the nurses have rarely spoken publicly and have reached out to the Board of Education only on a few occasions in previous years. Typically, these occasions have been instances that directly relate to the health and safety of our students. Tonight, I speak to you all with genuine concern for the health and safety of our students, staff, and community at large. The nurses have largely been a guiding voice behind the scenes throughout the planning of reopening. We have been asked by administration our position on how to address and navigate the guidelines put forth by the New York State Department of Health, which schools must implement at a minimum the requirements that are set forth in the documents. The first document dated 7/13 and updated on August 26th. We have provided answers based on our medical expertise and knowledge implementing and following the best practices from the healthcare professional's perspective. COVID-19 has placed us as nurses at the forefront, and many concerns have come to light. One of which is that COVID-19 has many symptoms, a lot of which overlap with other illnesses and medical diagnoses. There is conflicting information circulating both in our community and in the district in regards to what is required for a student who presents with symptoms of COVID-19 to return to school. The New York State Department of Health guidance is clear in stating that you need three things: a negative COVID test and a note from the doctor allowing a student to return to school, and symptom resolution. Our goal and top priority as registered nurses is to support, protect, and maintain the health and safety of our students, staff, and community. With that said, we ask that the guidance provided to school districts by the New York State Department of Health be adhered to for the well-being of the Sachem community. We look forward to continued conversations and communication with you all. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Kristen Gelzinis.
Hi.
Hello.
So my name's Kristen Gelzinis. My family chose remote learning because we are very much at a health risk. Already been on event, not something I ever want to do again. I've reached out to numerous people. The remote education is lacking. We can't have it both ways. We spent an hour on sports. And when Dr. Pelletieri asked if anybody had any questions regarding remote, nobody spoke up. I know I spoke to some of you, so you should have maybe relayed some of those issues, but you didn't. There is no timeline for us. There's no learning going on. My son has a reading teacher teaching 4th grade right now. She doesn't know the technology. I don't blame her. I don't fault her. I don't think she's wrong. She doesn't know the technology. She doesn't know the math. We don't know if he's going to get science or social studies. As far as we know right now, the only thing we're sure of is that at some point she'll get to ELA in math after she learns the program. I don't know when that is. We have special education kids in the wrong classes. They're in gen ed classes right now, or as of Monday, we're just put into a Google classroom with no teaching happening. These kids are in Google Meets with nothing. Make the magic happen, or, fix sports. Like, a lot of these people that chose remote chose it because of health reasons, not because they don't want their kids in school. We want our kids to get an education. You want to talk about equity for all? It's totally not equitable right now. These kids are so being failed, and I don't know who to talk to anymore. There's no liaison between Dr. Pelletieri or Mrs. Hines. There's nobody to even reach out to. The principals don't know, the teachers don't know, nobody knows anything, and nobody has a plan. And if you do, we would love to hear it, because right now it feels pretty hopeless that our kids are not getting any type of education. And maybe that's not true for all of them, but it's true for a good portion of them. So please spend as much time as you did on sports tonight, on the remote education plan. I am imploring you, because just as much as sports is important for all, so is education. Education will always be first in my book, always. And that, to me, is unacceptable that my kid went to school and has learned nothing beyond a kindergarten education right now. And that shouldn't be acceptable for anybody here.
Mrs. Gelzinis, usually we don't do this, but I'm going to, because I'm sitting in this seat and I'll decide when we do it and when we don't. It is not and this is going to come off wrong, so I apologize, but I sympathize 100%. I have had daily conversations with Dr. Pelletieri, and any conversation that I have had with the board has only been about remote. This board's job is not to administrate in the district. We have charged Dr. Pelletieri to charge his staff to fix the plan that we all know stinks. Just call it out. Everyone has said it. He said it. Everyone has said it. We all agree. We have no answers because he's fixing it. And he can't wave a magic wand. We are not talking about it tonight because the conversation that we're going to have is going to be back there because we're talking about changing a contract, and we can't have that discussion out here. So we can't talk about remote planning if we're talking about a change in a possible change in a contract. So trust me when I say, this is the first chance we've had to talk about sports because it just happened. But everything else has been about remote because other than Ms. Caliendo's comments, we haven't heard anything bad about in-person learning. All of the emails, all of the comments, all of the conversations have been about the remote plan. And that I can promise to anybody listening. That's all we're talking about daily. Because where I work, there is no problem with the remote plan. But there was foresight at some point to put Wi-Fi in and have a one-to-one district. We are going towards that way, but we're not there. So there are obstacles in the way to make it perfect. And I'll say it to you and I'll say it to anybody else. There is no replacing sitting in the seat in front of the teacher.
There's also no replacing parents.
Just a second. I understand. I do. But even if we live stream, it's never going to be perfect. We're all for it. We wanted everybody back in school, most of us. But even if we live stream every day, it's never, ever going to be perfect. So just understand that what you're reaching for, just make sure it's understandable. Rob?
I just want to say one thing, and Christian, I know we've gone back and forth, and it's nice to actually put a face to a name. And I know that Mr. Barbera came up and said that there hasn't been a discussion. I will tell you that the remote plan is my number one priority, and I think the number one priority of most of this board in getting it working. And the problem is, and it's going to be fixed, because if you think the fight on sports was bad, okay, the fight on fixing this remote plan is going to be worse. Okay, is freeing up time for teachers to be able to manage that Google Classroom. Okay, that I'm in a Google Classroom nightmare right now. My employer doesn't give us the time to do it. So I'm hearing from parents about it being inferior. Okay, and the problem is that we have to free up time, and that discussion, as Alex said, is going to be back there, and we are going to fix this problem. There's no question about it. This problem is going to be fixed. Sports is not more important than education. I just want to preface that to you and to the people out in the audience, that just because there was no discussion when Dr. Pelletieri asked if there were any questions, it's because the questions are confidential executive material, because as Alex said, it involves changing language in the contract, and that's why. But please make no mistake, that is the number one priority is the education, and that conversation is going to have. It's going to be a very, very late night tonight. I can promise you. I might go straight to work, but that is definitely our number one priority.
And I appreciate, and personally, just so you know, I appreciate your frustration. Our names are on all of this, and we really haven't had that much input on it. So trust me when I say that we want it fixed just as badly as everybody else wants it fixed.
We're not reaching for perfection. We're just reaching for education at this point. Like anything, really, truly.
Matthew?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I'll piggyback what they were saying. I have a whole page full. This is all about remote. It really is. And I feel for you. I really do. The teachers are being asked to do three people's jobs at one time. It's not working the way it's going. My son, who's in fourth grade, is having a great experience. Doesn't complain about the masks or anything. But the kids that are going every other day, that is what it is. But the remote part, they deserve an education. And to ask teachers to teach a live class and control a Google Classroom at the same time is ridiculous. So now everyone's going to suffer, including the kids that are in the classroom. And then the whole thing about special ed kids. Special ed kids are getting really screwed. So there's a lot of discussion that has to go. And I don't blame anybody. I'm not pointing any fingers. It is what it is. I mean, nobody asked to have to make this plan or anything. And I'm not personally smart enough to figure it out either. So, but collectively, we're all going to do it together, right? So, but believe me, it is number one priority. Teachers, number one priority. Parents, number one priority that we get the best education for our kids, remote or in class?
Can I just ask, and I wrote this to you earlier, I'm like begging you. The lack of information and communication between the administration and the remote parents is very frustrating. It's probably the most frustrating because we have no timeline and no information. If you could simply appoint somebody to be the go-between to field those calls, because I'm sure you have more important things to do, and that's not like sarcastic. I'm absolutely certain of it.
There's
But
nothing,
somebody.
Yeah, let me just say there's nothing more important that I do than care about our kids and our community. So when I can, I take those calls, I answer those emails. I work with folks in our office, and yes, we will do a better job of communicating and having a point person on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. Cindy D. Simone. How are you? There's wipes there if you want.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Just sit back a little bit.
No problem.
I want to just special shout out to the nurse back there who spoke. Thank you very much. And everybody else who spoke tonight. There were a lot of things I wanted to say. There was specific reasons I came here today, but I know that I had to condense it. So I wrote a couple of things out. First of all, my name is Cindy D. Simone. I have two 7-year-olds. I have twins that are in 2nd grade in Chippewa at their home school. And for weeks now, I've been calling and emailing and writing letters and attending Zoom meetings, trying to get someone to see my specific situation. I have a child who's medically fragile, and I also have the same child that has a concurrent learning disability. Speaking to special education, a couple of people have mentioned it. The special education kids are the ones that are really struggling right now. My family is struggling right now, and I know a lot of other families out there are struggling as well. My intention was to come here tonight and to voice my displeasure at the choices the district has made for my family. I believe that I've been put in a position that is making me choose between my child's education and my child's life. And I've heard many tonight and others say outright that they allude to the opinion that COVID doesn't scare them. I have to say, COVID scares me. And there are a lot of reasons that it scares me, from my personal experience and from my medical experience, and because I have a medically fragile child. Now, I realize 3 minutes is not going to be enough time to plead my individual case, to come to a resolution, especially in this public forum. Yet I'm compelled to speak now, and I'll do it from my heart. I've been a nurse for 24 years. 20 of those years were in the emergency department in 2 local hospitals. And in that capacity, I have seen many times, more times than I can count. I've experienced tragedy and trauma, and at a close range. And I thought I'd seen everything in all those years. And this past year has proven me very wrong. This past year was unimaginable. Challenges all of us face, not just any of us in the medical community or parents. There's a contentious political climate. There's a pandemic. There's a financial crisis. There's a climate crisis. A lot of people are unemployed. I could go on and on, but I won't, because all these problems are adult problems. And I'm here to speak for the children. So there's one point that I want everybody here to take from my 3 minutes. And that is that each and every person in this room, whether they're before me or behind me, have real problems and have their own specific problem or their own specific thing that they're worried about and they're trying to deal with. But we are all adults here. So to those assembled here today, I implore you, from one adult to another, please never forget that on the other side of every phone call, on the other side of every email, on the other side of every text, on the other side of every meeting, every voicemail, every message. There's a child on the other side of all of them. Every message that you get has a child. That child only has us, the parents, to look to and to lead them to the other side of this crisis. And if that child has special needs, they're even more at risk of falling behind. The children are why we're all here today. I also want to take this time and this opportunity to say thank you. Thank you to each and every one of the teachers here, every of them looking on Zoom, every one of them in our community, whether they be remote or in person, every bus driver, every lunch lady, every secretary, every custodian, administrator, board member, thank you. Thank you for speaking for our children. Thank you for speaking up for them every day. You all here are most times the only voice for the voiceless children. They don't have the capacity to ask for the help. I'm here to ask for that help for them. You have the power to change lives and make a difference every day. And on final personal note, I'd like to specifically thank Mr. Parental for answering my emails with some short answers, but thank you very much for answering. I'd like to point out specifically, though, Miss Laura Slatterly and Miss Meredith Volpe. I think Miss Volpe, yes, and Miss Slatterly, thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to personalize a response to my letter. It made me feel like my child was not just a number. It made me feel like my child was worthy of the time and understanding of a personal response. It meant a lot to me. I'll never stop fighting for my children. And I hope that all the problems we face can be solved for all the children with the benefit of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Kelly Coughlin. If I said it wrong, I apologize. Okay.
Do a little cleaning on here. I don't know everybody's name, but thank you. This is my first time here, so it's kind of exciting, very emotional. I've cried quite a few times. So my name is Kelly Coughlin. I'm a Sachem alumni. I have 3 children, one that graduated East a year ago, one is a junior, and one is in first grade. Yes, she was a surprise. So we talked about remote. I'm not going to really hash all that out. Sports is very important to me. My brother's in the Hall of Fame. But so obviously theater is, and so is education. I chose to keep my children home because exactly what you said. I'm going to cry. I just didn't feel it was mentally right for them. They're very positive, uplifting children. They love to hug. They love to talk to their friends. They love to hug their teachers. And as much as I know that there are moving parts in all of this, for me and my family, it just wasn't right for us in the way we live our life. So that's why I kept them home. With that said, my first grader, she's doing the best she can, the art teacher, the gym teacher, and, I'm very fortunate that I'm able to give her as much as I can, though she's cries every morning because she can't be with her friends, but we do what we can. For my junior, it's been really difficult. She's not a student where it just comes to her. She works her ass off. And she's so let down. The first day of school, she wrote all of her teachers voicing her concern, being the junior. She wants to go to LSU. Grades don't come easily to her, but she works so hard. And not one teacher emailed her back. So I thank you for what you said. There has not been one type of communication from my child. I got a phone call from one of her teachers today, actually reprimanding me that she was not on Google. And we looked and she did not respond to my daughter's emails. So I know, again, there are so many moving parts to this, and I'm so gracious and I'm full of gratitude for each and every one of you. I know you're working endlessly for it, but there's something missing, and I know that you're working hard on that. But these children, they as much as they love their moms, they need their teachers, they need their mentors. I'm a dance teacher, so I get how they need their teachers. I don't know if something could be recorded. I get the live streaming, especially in this district. Again, I'm an alumni. I get how large it is. But if there is even a recording that they could upload to Google, if they can spend 30 minutes in their basement recording it and uploading it to something. But to have a junior wanting to go to a strong school and has worked so hard to make herself a D student to an A student to get there and then have one assignment is just not right. So that's where I'm at. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I appreciate it.
Thank you.
you.
Maria Deckenbach.
Hi, how are you? Most of you have probably heard from me already via email, but I did want to make it a point to come in and also, kind of give my thoughts on the remote learning. I know you guys touched upon it briefly, but I do think it's important that we touch on it a little bit longer. I'm here today as a parent of a fourth grader in our community. I myself was a graduate of Sachem, along with 4 of my brothers and sisters. When it came time for me to purchase my own home to raise my family in, I knew I wanted that home to be in Sachem. I was proud of the district I grew up in and proud of the education and experiences I received. I'm here today to say that for the first time, I'm disappointed in the district I've called home. I enrolled my 9-year-old daughter in remote learning. I made that decision based off promises you all made during numerous board meetings over the last 2 months. I made sure that I listened to every one of them. A little bit about myself. I'm the parent to 4 amazing children. My 9-year-old is fortunate enough to be a happy and healthy child, but I can't say the same for my younger 3, all born premature. One of them is a 5-month-old baby girl, and she has a heart condition, one that has already led to a surgery at only a few weeks old, and potential for another surgery in the upcoming months. I also have a 2-year-old daughter who was on oxygen for almost the entire first year of life. She was born with 2 collapsed lungs and required the strongest of ventilators and spent her first 2 months of life in 3 hospitals, and we almost lost her. She has a current diagnosis of bronchopulmonary dysplasia and chronic lung disease. And lastly, I have a 3.5-year-old son who spent 2 weeks at Stony Brook Hospital last year for severe double lobe pneumonia. We were told he likely suffered so much because of his prematurity as well as chronic respiratory issues. So you see, I didn't choose remote simply because I want to keep my oldest child home every day. I was faced with a decision of protecting my younger kids' health, so I opted for remote and hoped Sachem would deliver an appropriate curriculum. Well, I'm here to say Sachem failed. My daughter was assigned a teacher just hours before school started, and I'm told from other remote families that we were actually fortunate that she was assigned a teacher because some didn't have teachers for the entire first week of school, which is unacceptable. But I was shocked to find out that that teacher she was assigned to her 4th grade class was also a reading teacher who has a full day of in-person instruction. We were told that we would have an age-appropriate amount of live instruction every day, only to come find out that that live instruction is only an hour long. And during that hour, her teacher was expected to cover math, ELA, and potentially science and social studies. That's an impossible task for any teacher, let alone a teacher who doesn't normally teach that grade level. But to make it worse, the teachers were given no guidance from Sachem on what they were supposed to be teaching or how. They were not given the tools they needed to make this happen. The first 3 days of remote learning, her teacher struggled with technology issues. She told our teacher she was learning how to use, she told our kids she was learning how to use Google Classroom just as they were. She was kicked off live various times throughout the hour every day. So what was supposed to be an hour of teaching ended up being nowhere near an hour. But the biggest issue was that she was expected to teach our children for the hour and then go and teach a full day of classes in person. She told our kids that after the hour, she wouldn't have time to answer any questions because she had to rush to those in-person classes and doesn't sign on again at the end of the day after 3:15. So any questions our kids may have had would need to be asked during that hour of live instruction. So I have to ask, when is the teaching actually supposed to take place? I don't blame the teacher for the lack of teaching and support she can provide. I blame the district for asking her to do the job of two people at the same time. I'm going to say it again. I don't blame the teacher. You guys can't expect her to do two jobs. I sent numerous emails to the board as well as the administration, and they largely fell on deaf ears. The straw that broke the camel's back was when the email went out asking the teachers to double their efforts for the remote students. Why should our teachers have to do double their workloads?
Mrs. Deckenbeck, thank you. 3 minutes.
I just want to wrap this up really quick. So inevitably, I ended up having to make the decision to unenroll my daughter from remote learning and put her into in-person. I was forced to make the decision to risk my younger kid's health in order for my older child to get a fair and equitable education that was promised. That's not a decision any parent should have to make due to something that was fully controlled and able to be changed by the board and the administration and the district. It shouldn't have had to happen. And I hope that you guys really think and modify the remote learning platform so no other parent has to make that decision between their child's education or other potentially immune compromised kids at home, because it was not an easy decision, and it was not one that I wanted to make, but I felt backed against the wall by the district. So I really hope you guys take it seriously and really put forth an effort the same way you were all very, eager and excited
Mrs.
about
Deckenbeck,
the sports.
thank
Please
you.
do the same for the remote learning. Okay. I ask you to. Thank you.
Seth Weissman. It could be Weissman, so I apologize. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. This is my first meeting I've been to. A lot of touching things I've heard. A lot of things I like to that were addressed. Ever since everything happened, since last March to now, I had to, I let my kids go to school because I saw how they were doing in the classroom last year, and they struggled. And my kids, I have 3 children in the school district. One's in high school, senior in high school. One's started 9th grade this year, and my daughter is in 5th grade. And I tell you, last year, the remote learning was horrible. I can vouch for a lot of parents out there. They were struggling with the children. I've seen other school districts that that did better than we did. And being such a big school district, we could have done better. I feel that our school district should have done better. And that's what I feel. So, I mean, if the teachers can help, and if the school district can help better, they need more. They need more.
Appreciate it.
For
Thank
our
you very
children.
much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 3 is business items, consent agenda A through D. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Mancaruso, seconded by Ms. Slattery. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We're going to do the next one a little bit different. We're going to go personnel consent agenda. We're going to go A through O and Q. Can I please have a motion? We're going to leave clubs out so we can have the discussion now before we do this. Okay, Mr. Scavo. Seconded by Mr. Baumann. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We are on, excuse me, just one second. We are on, or did I approve it without? All right, well, we could still have the, I mean, we were going to approve that anyway. So, what, did I leave something out? I apologize if I did. I circled the wrong one. P. Letter P. 10-year increment for teaching personnel. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Ms. Slattery, second by Ms. Volpe. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We're gonna take a little break right in here. It's on for later, but we might as well have the conversation now about clubs. I had no idea. My phone started to absolutely blow up saying, why are you cutting clubs? Why? What clubs are going? What clubs are not? And it looks like by the agenda that, no, that's okay. It looks like by the agenda that only the honor societies and others are going, and we're missing a bunch of them. There's no class government, there's no buddies club, there's no mentor club, drama club, many, many more. So if we can just get clarification on, this was never a board discussion to cut clubs. We was never brought to our attention. And I've heard from multiple board members about this. We've heard from multiple community members about this. I've gotten a couple of emails from students. I just don't understand how this happened without us approving it or disapproving it for that matter. So if we can just get clarification on that, that would be great. Because I don't know, and I'm not speaking for anybody, but I haven't heard from anybody that would approve cutting any of the clubs. Yeah.
If I could, yeah, if I could jump in, I don't think clubs were cut. I think what we did was go in and look at what clubs needed to be approved immediately as school got underway, so students could begin in the, as you see from the list of clubs, the National Honor Societies, the government, the Art Honor Society, again, student government. There's about 50 clubs that did get approved. The other clubs, there was no cancellation. There was no board trying to cancel clubs or get rid of clubs. It was more of a discussion along the lines of, if sports were coming back on September 21, of course, we would have a discussion about clubs coming back as well, because students would be then permitted to be after school. Then when that did not take place, we knew that we did want to at least get these clubs underway and started in the schools. And we could certainly have a discussion about what clubs we feel, if we want to, can operate safely in schools. It is keeping kids after school. There are no buses right now for kids to go home with clubs. So we would have to have a longer conversation about that. But this was not any attempt to cut clubs or cast the board in a light that they were cutting clubs or canceling clubs to save money or anything like that.
Yes, please. I have plenty to say, but I'll let others go.
Well, I was just curious, were the advisors of these clubs asked, did they want to run their clubs? Were they asked for any input on that?
I'd have to speak to, I don't know, John or Erin, did you have that conversation? Erin, thank you. Ms. Hines?
We met as a group with all of the administrators at the building level, and they were supposed to have shared that they had talked with the advisors that we have on so far. Really, a lot of these were chosen because of the hours and making sure that the students could at least start any of those service hours that they wanted to virtually.
Jim?
Isn't there an issue with, because of the AB days, if you ran, say the robotics club, and you were going to have the meet on a day that half the class was in remote, how are they going to go to the robotics club meeting? Wasn't that an issue? I think it was. We had discussed that a little bit.
I don't remember. I apologize. I don't remember having that discussion.
I think that's prior to my arrival, but I would imagine that would be an issue.
Bill?
I think I understand what happened here. I mean, it seems to me this is purely logistical. If the kids are not in school, how are you going to have the club? If you don't have Wi-Fi throughout the district, you can't have the club virtually necessarily, right? So I think we haven't quite worked this out yet, is what it is. Clubs haven't been canceled. We haven't agreed to cancel any clubs, but we haven't figured out how we're offering the clubs yet. Doesn't mean they'll happen, doesn't mean they won't happen. But that seems to be where we are. Somebody can tell me if I'm wrong.
I mean, yeah, Meredith, just 1 second, okay? I just feel that if it's an A-B situation, 1 week it's A, 1 week it's B. If kids that are home want to be brought up after and go into the club, let them in. If they can't make it, they're going to get it the next week when they're in the building. But I think, again, this is a dangerous road of saying, well, maybe we're going to start it and maybe we won't. And we kick the can a little bit further, and then all of a sudden it's June and there hasn't been sports or clubs. And I just think the sooner we could start everything, I'm all for 100%. Let's start tomorrow. Get the buses on the road. No one's walking. No one's nothing. And we need to offer as much as we possibly can.
So I recall, I don't remember which board meeting it was, but we did ask about clubs and we were told for now they're going to run virtually. Did that not ever happen? Did they never start virtually?
Our attention was first to the remote, and as you can see, it's been very challenging because of the internet that has not been in place for years here. And so we're working towards that. The clubs, again, the way that we identified it originally was to say, okay, which ones definitely need to start running so that we can make sure it does not in any way negatively affect the student as far as any like service hours. Because we are really trying our hardest to figure out that virtual aspect, whether it be live streaming or on Google Meet, making sure we have enough devices, because we did loan out quite a few devices to families that had no technology. These are a few issues that it's not kicking the can down. It's really making sure that we're not compounding one issue with yet another, trying to start multiple things without really having enough resources for us to do that. So we started with the ones that we could.
So I would hate to see remote learning suffer and get clubs up and running. That's not ever. But my understanding is remote suffers because of our Wi-Fi issues, live streaming issues, all of that. But that's also because we're trying to do every classroom at the same time. Clubs are usually met, there's so few of them meeting at the same time that I would think, and I'm not a technology person, but I would think that an advisor being able to run their club virtually, at least for a little while, at least, you know, it's kind of like how remote learning point blank sucked in March, April, and May. But our coaches were still pretty able to get their team to at least meet up virtually. And, you know, I would think like, just like with sports, let's just get it going somewhat. We know it's not going to be perfect. We know it's not going to be the greatest thing in the world, but it gives the kids something. You know, robotics is a hard one. That's a hard virtual meeting.
I think that's really been the mantra for everything. And I don't want to speak for Dr. Pelletieri because now he is here. And it's been really great to have his support moving forward with all of this. But I want to, you know, what you said is exactly what we've been doing, just starting somewhere so that the kids could start returning and feeling somewhat normal. It is not perfect. It has been very challenging to try and get everything up and running. We've had multiple discussions about how to make it better. And it seems like tonight that's a further part of our discussion. How do we move forward with remote learning and then clubs to make sure that those are starting for the students as well.
Okay.
Sorry, Martha, I apologize.
No, I just one more thing. I mean, I know there's going to be some clubs like we can't have a drama club because right now we're not permitted to have a drama production, but we can still have those kids befriending one another in some way with an advisor. You know, maybe they all talk about Broadway. Maybe they'll talk about what they would love to see happen, what their thoughts are, you know. So, okay, they're not getting together to produce a play, but how about they get together, even if it's, I mean, they all have phones, almost all of them. Maybe not all of them, but almost all of them have phones. Maybe it's a group chat. I mean, my kids have a football group chat, a wrestling group chat, a 3-friend group chat, a this friend group chat. They have the technology in their own hands. And I think if we kind of gave them the reins and let them take it, that they might surprise us. They might teach us, like, hey, drama club, here's your advisor. You guys figure out what you want to do in lieu of a production right now. Here, robotics club, we know you can't sit and, you know, do what you do, but at least if we give them the ability, I think just holding off completely is a mistake.
And again, Meredith stole some of what I wanted to say. We have some of the best advisors for our clubs. I think if we say to the advisor, what would be your plan? We're in a pandemic, we have COVID. What would be your plan for the club? Would you want to meet now every week, every other week? Would it be through Zoom? Can you do it this way? How would you run your club? Can you give a mission statement and a plan so we can get our kids some social interaction, give them something that they're missing in school? Let our advisors who know our kids, who know their clubs, who know better than I do, because I don't know, what would be the best plan for our students, and have them submit those plans and get those clubs up and running. Because there has to be a plan. It's not going to be the way it always was. We all know that. So the advisor knows our students, knows Sachem, knows their building, knows what they're dealing with a hybrid schedule. What would be your plan for running your club? And that would just be, I would defer to the advisors to let us know how they could make this work for our students.
Alex. Yeah, I come from a district where I run 2 clubs, and that's exactly what happened. The AP that's in charge of clubs reached out to all the advisors and asked us, do you want to run your club, and how would you run it? And that's exactly what we did. And that's, that's important. And the drama, Meredith, as you were talking, I was just thinking, they could do a production, just not a live audience. Make a movie, make that, what's that popular play that made a movie? What's that?
The Producers?
No, the one that no one can afford to go to. Hamilton.
Oh, right.
They made a movie and it's a big success. I mean, there's nothing wrong. We have to be creative.
Right. And again, I'm a board member. I'm not a teacher. I don't know how to be creative. But
No,
our
I understand, but
advisors
the
know how to be
advisors do,
creative.
exactly.
And just so you know, where we work, drama club started today.
Yeah.
In the auditorium, in a big place,
And maybe
spaced
we
out. They
need
put
to-
tape on the seats, and they were all able to meet.
And I think we could figure out a way for the hybrid. I mean, that's one thing that we do well as a community, is we come together when needed. And I think that, I'm off on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Anybody needs a ride, let me know. I'll bring your kid up. And I think people would do the same for each other. So I think that while I respect the hard work that goes in throughout this entire district, I think sometimes decisions get made without consulting many people, and many people have many different solutions to the same problem. And so if we say, oh, that hybrid thing, that's really going to kick us in the butt. Well, there was one solution, but another solution is, let's make it open. Let's make these clubs open to every kid. And I will tell you that the Sachem moms will find a way to get their kids there. I promise you that.
Rob?
Meredith, you said Wednesday, Thursday, you're available? Okay. Listen, we just spent an hour talking about the social emotional well-being of our students. And, there are things that we don't have control of. Bill, expressed it perfectly. We don't have control of social distancing that was handed down from the governor. And we had to follow those guidelines. And yeah, there were 8 or 7, whatever it was, board members that wanted to open up fully, even against the guidelines, how we interpreted them. Sports, we didn't have control of that. That was just completely taken away from us. But the one thing that this board does have control of that will provide social emotional piece to what the kids are lacking is clubs, co-curricular activities for our kids. The questions that I have, and before I go into, what do we budget for this 2021 school year for clubs?
$550,000.
And I'm assuming that was the same as last year?
Plus the contractual increase.
Okay, so my before I leave here, I want to know that $550,000 is still going to be used for co-curricular activities for kids. We're not pulling any of that off the table. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So the thing is that we can get creative. We can provide opportunities. We can get the advisors. Kids need this. And exactly what Alex said. I mean, look, we could run a club on a gardening club on a week, 1 week, and then a B week another week. And if parents have the ability, or neighborhoods, or grandparents have the ability to get that child up there, for that club, I can't see why we can't do that. Teachers want to interact with kids. Kids want to interact with teachers. It's a big part of what's missing right now in school systems. And I'm telling you, I want to know, leaving here tonight, that $550,000 and whatever the allocations were to every school, it's going to be their discretion to be able to run those clubs as they feel they need to run the clubs based upon the needs of the schools and the students. That money is going to be used for that. That allocation is used for that.
Yeah, without a doubt, there has been no decision made to let's take this and put it over here and not you. Oh, look at that. We could grab that and put that over. Now, again, John tells me every day, we have a fiduciary responsibility to our community and be cognizant of the fact that we could end up having cuts at mid-year. So we always have to think about that, but none of that went into this plan. As Bill mentioned, logistically, we need to get around some things. We got started right away with those clubs that we knew the administrators spoke with teachers around. Let us come back with a plan, speaking to the advisors, the administrators, the teachers, the people that know their clubs, come back with a plan, as Mrs. Slattery said, that's safe for our kids to get together, and we will allocate those funds for those kids in those clubs. Now, I don't know that we can bus everyone here or bus everyone back, as Mrs. Volpe said. Parents will make that work, and we'll try to support as best we can. But we
with
want
the
those
busing,
clubs to run
we
as well.
budgeted for busing, for after-school busing. I know that BOCES kind of consumed some of that.
Yeah, you budget for 2 late buses at all secondary level, but we had to utilize those buses to bring in and bring home BOCES children on their alternate days off. So there was some reallocation of the bus fleet. Now, depending upon how many clubs you're running, and I would need to know the numbers of students, some of that could be allocated within the current schematic. And if it couldn't, then I'd have to come back to you and let you know what that increased transportation cost would be. So we'd have to get numbers first.
Is it possible to get those numbers so we can have a better idea? Because kids are going to need a ride home, and my concern is always, once again, getting kids home safely. My biggest concern are definitely those middle school age children that we don't want to encourage them to cross dangerous highways. We don't want to encourage them to walk down Portion Road or Patrick Cooper Road and, God forbid, get struck. And especially now in the fall, when we start moving that clock back, it starts getting dark early. So I'd like to see what the cost is, for busing, but I just want to understand that we're going to be able to run those clubs, allocate that money for each of the schools so that, we could at least possibly, definitely bring those kids back so they can interact with their advisors and get that social emotional piece. So.
Matthew.
I'll just say this one more thing, because I kind of been thinking about it. And, I come from I work in a district where the kids get everything. They really do. They get all their clubs. They get all their teams. Not teams, but they get all their clubs. They're in full. And whenever I talk about this and I say that's what I want for my kids, I hear, that's 3 village money. That's 3 village this and 3 village. Well, our kids are not sewer rats. They deserve just as much as 3 village. And I'm embarrassed that we don't have Wi-Fi infrastructure. It's embarrassing. And I don't think it's the fault of anybody in this room. So I'm not pointing any fingers. I'm just saying we have to strive to get Sachem to where we know it should be. And we're so great in so many ways, but we gotta further.
If I could just jump on for a moment, thank you so much, and I agree with you. That is underway. That is something I'm proud of. That as I walked the buildings the first days this summer before I actually started, finding out that these systems are underway. That Mr. O'Keefe and this board and this community and this cabinet put those pieces in place. They're not there now. That is unfortunate. It is going to take some time, but it is underway. We are getting there. Sachem deserves it, and we'll make sure that it happens.
Anyone else? Okay.
Sorry.
Please.
I fully get what you're saying, but we also have to have the responsibility of, when we make a statement like that, of realizing we don't have 3 village money. We don't have those tax dollars. So we have to be responsible in what we expect. And yes, we are working as a district to get there, and we are making huge strides, but we'll never have 3 village money. And anybody who thinks that they can pay Sachem taxes and get 3 village benefits doesn't understand math.
I'm going to say something now. That's one of the biggest reasons that I ran for the board. Watching what happens where we work, and then coming back here and knowing what happened when I was here, it has nothing to do with the money. It's how it's spent. We have the money because it's getting done. We just don't have it in front of us right now. They don't have anything. They don't have anything that we don't have. They have one-to-one. Well, we're working towards that. They have Wi-Fi. Well, it's the wire is in, but it's not all connected yet. So yes, they have all their sports. Yes, sports was canceled, but we're already talking about workouts and setting dates, and that we can get with our teams and follow regulations and get back in the gym and on the fields and on the courts, so that even though we can't play a sanctioned sport, we can at least work out together and have that social emotional well-being. I think that they don't have anything we can't have. Our budget is much bigger than theirs. And yes, we're bigger, and those decisions were made before I got here, but we have the resources if we spend them the right way.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
we also have
we are
a-
doing that now, but we have 12,000 students. If you do anything that's worth $1, it's $12,000. So we're definitely working in a very responsible manner now. And thank God we brought John on. But if decisions had been made better in the past, maybe we would be further advanced than we are, but we can never think that we are going to get the same exact all the way with a community that pays much higher taxes and has much fewer students. They have a lot more money to go for a lot less students. So that's what it's nice to compare, but we always have to compare responsibly. That's the only point I'm making.
I just think, like what Alex said, I think, it's not that the money isn't there, it's how it's been spent in the past. And I don't like hearing that we can't be as good as Three Village because they make more money than we do. We just have to be more creative.
I just have to say one thing, because I said it to everybody here and to everybody in this community. I would have not had my son, Michael, anyplace else other than Sachem. He got a much better education here, much better experience than he would have ever gotten in Three Village. And I feel that way. I feel passionate about Sachem. I feel like we have the best teachers. Yes, we have in the past, through gap elimination, through our budget issues, and through not applying for the Smart School Bond, have the technology where other districts around us have. We are getting there. We're working towards that. But I don't think there's any community or any place as special as Sachem. That's just my opinion.
I agree.
And just for one thing, just to clarify the rumors that are out there about bad decisions, we had 5 years minus $25 million for 5 years straight. So we're worried about a $26 million cut this year. We had that 5 years in a row. And that's what led us to our downfall. An article was written by Newsday explaining the exact process what happened. The cuts that were made to Sachem were not equitable to the cuts that were made to other districts. All right, so we did the best we did, what we could do. We kept the district afloat. We still offered clubs, we still offered things, but that, for clarification, was not because of poor decisions that previous or past board members made. It's because year after year after year, we saw $16 to $18 million cut and another $13 million increase in health insurance as well as teacher retirement system. So when you add it all up, it's $25 million a year. We lost $125 million in what could have been in reserves. So.
Okay. I don't know what page this is. I apologize. We're on number 5. It's consent agenda A through J for the support staff. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Ms. Slattery, second by Mr. Scavo. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 6, contracts. Consent agenda A through G. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Mancaruso, seconded by Mr. Coggin. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 7 is a budget transfer in the amount of $350,000 to allocate funds to cover increased unemployment claims. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Ms. Slattery, seconded by Mr. Scavo. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 8, Committee on Special Education, consent agenda A through B. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Ms. Wadawa, seconded by Mr. Baumann. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 9, monthly reports, board committees. I don't know if anybody is meeting. Yep, Mr. Kiernan.
For the legislative committee, we did not meet, but tonight, the chairperson, Krupa Lauricella, sent out 3 meeting date requests to all the members to choose one that's best for them and to whether to meet on Zoom or in person. So it'd be October 6th, October 7th, or October 13th. So that'll be our first meeting.
Do you know, I don't know if you've had the discussion about the topic of the conversation.
The topic probably is to organize and to find out how we're going to, get board information through me to them and back and forth.
Sounds good.
Because I don't know how really it was done in the past. This is my first crack at it. But unless I'm wrong, my role is to be the intermediary for the board. So the board is going to decide on what the issues are that they want the committee to discuss and act on, and vice versa. When they come up with ideas, I come back and tell the board. Am I accurate with my
Sounds
role
good.
on? Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
And on the audit committee, John, when's our meeting?
October 5th.
And then we report back to the board, correct?
On October 7th at our board meeting, the external auditors will be here to present the financial statements.
Thank you. Anyone else? I don't believe there's anybody else for public comment tonight. We have a couple of board discussion items. In case you haven't heard us enough tonight, we talked about clubs. We are going to talk about outside facility use and building facility use. Obviously with sports being canceled, there has been a will of the board, or at least some of the board members, to have this discussion to open it up for outside groups, maybe even inside groups to work out after school. I don't know where the discussion is going, but if anybody would like to start, please feel free.
So I'll start.
Outside. Yes, please.
So,
I don't know.
and maybe Mrs. Trombetta, maybe you'd be the best person to ask this too, but could any of our sports, I know that they're permitted to practice. Does that include all fall sports? Does that not include football and volleyball? And now that they've been canceled, does it still?
I
hold
believe
true?
it includes all sports are permitted to practice, because now that we've made the decision to postpone to January to play, all sports will be playing an 8-week season starting in January.
Okay.
So they can start practicing and conditioning now.
So are they permitted to use our weight room, our gyms, our fields? Are our own sports teams permitted to do that?
Yes, we'll have to have that conversation about how to do that safely. I don't know. Patty, is football, for example, allowed to practice at this time the game of football, the sport of football, or
I
must
think it's
they
more
be?
conditioning and training
Yeah.
at the moment. And I
Okay,
know
that's what I
Gary and
understood.
Shannon are working through the document Return to Play to make sure that they can do it safely.
Okay, yes. So a document was put out, Return to Play, that we need to go through and make sure that we can have groups in the weight room or a gym where they can be safely working out together to prepare to play.
Yes.
Okay.
That book covers each individual sport and the guidelines to come back, or is it just a general safety?
I'm not sure.
Okay. So then part of the issue is that we decided, because of social distancing, not to open it up to outside groups if our own groups were not allowed. And now that we're saying that after some conversation takes place, that we're going to open it up for our kids. I mean, not the outside group isn't our kids, but the teams that are going to represent Sachem in the spring. Are we going to open it up now for the springtime? Are we going to open up our fields now for the outside groups? And that's a discussion that we have to have and decide on. So if anybody wants to go.
I'm a little confused. You talk about interior parts,
Outside.
Right.
I mean, we're being told that the inside groups, after they go through the document, the outside groups do not have to follow that exact document. There's different guidelines for that.
This is something that, it's come up in the past. Obviously Sachem Soccer is here. Sachem Youth Soccer is here. They start their league for the fall into the spring. It's a 2-season sport. They've made requests to use the fields during the time when the governor of New York said that sports is not running. The board took the position that, look, we couldn't have them on the fields. We're not going to have them on the fields for purposes of safety. The governor now has since lifted that, okay? And a lot of the soccer and youth organizations have put together safety plans, okay, that allow kids to be able to get back together in a safe manner, whether it's walking onto the fields with masks, social distancing as best they can. Coaches and trainers have to have masks on. They put together very, very strict guidelines as to how it could be done in a safe manner. And it's my understanding too that I believe that they actually included a rider. Okay, one of the concerns I think the board might have been is if a kid does get sick and playing on one of the fields, would the school district be liable? And it's my understanding now that there might be a rider, okay, that covers COVID-19 under their insurance plan, which would actually come into play if the kid did get sick and it was able to be proven that the kid got sick on the field, the insurance would kick in for the youth organization before it actually kicks in for Sachem.
I don't know if Chris wants to talk on that, just to kind of guide us in.
Yeah, I'd have to review all of that. If the board gives the direction that it is something that you want to explore in a legally compliant and safe manner, then we would pursue that on your behalf. But obviously, you wouldn't have all those answers tonight.
So the question is, I'm asking this board to reconsider allowing the Sachem Youth Soccer organization that houses 1,100, 1,200 students, Sachem students, okay, in intramural soccer and even travel soccer, to be able to at least gain access to the field again. Right now, the field is sitting unattended. Up to a couple weeks ago, the grass was very high. It was yellow as a result of the of non-watering. And we want to be able to at least allow students to be able to get out and be able to socialize, okay, on a field of sports. We just spent an hour talking about how disappointed we were with Section 11 canceling sport because it takes away the social emotional piece from the kids. We have a youth organization that wants to get back on the field, and I would ask that the district, at least consider, or the board at least consider those children getting back out there to at least play intramural soccer.
Jim?
Yeah, I agree with that statement. I think the most important part will be to make sure that the district is protected. When outside organizations are using our facilities, we have to have some strict guidelines that they're going to adhere to the state's guidelines, and any violation of that, we would be protected from. So, I would be all for that as long as council was comfortable that the district was covered in case some organization did not comply and somebody got hurt or sick.
I mean, one of the complications is that the state has imposed upon the districts who allow outside use a certain obligation to ensure that there is, and essentially police. I was trying not to use that word, but that's exactly what I was thinking, Jim. Really, typically, it's one thing to say that in an agreement with an outside entity, you have these responsibilities and you have these obligations, and you must, as a prerequisite to the use of our facilities, be compliant. And normally that's sufficient, along with the insurance protections for the usual kinds of potential exposure that we would have, naming us as an additional insured. Those are the typical agreements that we get involved in the COVID environment now. In addition to imposing upon the outside groups the obligations for them to be compliant, there's an additional layer of obligation to the district to police that compliance and ensure that the people using your facilities are doing so in a reasonable way, compliant with their obligations. And we have to talk a little bit about, at some point in a couple of different ways, but some of it in executive session, what obligations and costs that imposes upon you to police that behavior and ensure compliance, the old trust but verify, sentiment. So those are things that would have to be sussed out and vetted. Again, not immediately tonight. We would bring some study of that back to you. If the direction of the board is it's a direction we want to go in and we'd like to do it, as quickly and reasonably as possible, we would get involved as quickly as reasonably as possible to give you that both legal advice and the practical advice about how that could be done.
So Chris, if these outside groups, you say we kind of have to police them, if we were able to put something in where one of our security guards actually visited each practice and whatever, but that entity paid for that security guard, it wouldn't cost the district anything. Do you think that's a solution?
That's certainly a discussion point, yeah, and potentially a solution. And I see, look, you've got on the agenda the billing facility and usage policy, which again, I think was drafted and discussed in a non-COVID environment, right? So you may have aspects of that policy if you're talking about changing what you want to do between now and sometime in the near future to allow those outside groups there, it probably would be something that you want to put to the top of the priority list for your policy committee to revisit in short order, to talk about the interplay between the sorts of things that I just talked about and what your policy expresses, and how to marry those two obligations.
Laura?
So one, I just want to make sure that if we're bringing our student athletes, Sachem student athletes, back to use our courts, our fields, our locker rooms, our basketball courts, or weight rooms for workouts, now with all the protocols in place, there's going to be extra cleaning, disinfecting, everything required. So I would like to make our student athletes our first priority over any outside group. And I don't know that we can accommodate both. So that would be my concern because of the disinfectant and every other procedure. So that's number one. That's my concern. So before we start allowing outside groups to come in and use our facilities, let's make sure our student athletes are taken care of first, and everything that we have to do to follow the disinfectant protocols is adhered to. And again, the cost of, if we do allow outside groups to come in, of the disinfecting, of the policing of that, of the security guard, all would have to be borne by the outside groups. And I think this may have to be an executive session discussion regarding the lease agreement and different issues that went on that we've discussed in executive session before I can make any decision on Waverly Fields.
The only thing I say is that time is of the essence. The season starts very quickly. Right? I know sometimes things, there are other priorities right now in building the remote program and getting things working. So I would say that if we could work sooner, on this year to at least address whatever the concerns are of legal counsel and also the board members, so that we can at least give them the opportunity to at least start their season and move forward. And if it means bringing a security guard in to help police it, okay, at the cost of the group that's using that field, I have no problem with that, and I'm sure they wouldn't have a problem with it. But I think they're eager to get their 1,000 kids onto the field, most of which are Sachem students. So, like I said, I'd rather move faster than slower, so that we don't miss, they don't miss the opportunity at least get those kids back on the field.
Meredith, and then Matt.
So, just because I don't always understand everything properly, but if we open the discussion right now, there are certain things about the SYSL fields that we can't discuss because it's a leased property. But we can propose right now to think about bringing back like the SIAG basketball or the Sachem Swim Club or things like that, where they're using our facilities, but obviously it wouldn't be for pennies at a time like it has been in the past. It would come at an increased cost. So do we have that discussion now? Because like Rob is saying, time is of the essence. We do want to see these kids get back in the pool and back on the courts and all that.
So, I mean, it would be as simple as, there's not really a vote to be taken. It's just a direction from the board in a public session for administration and council to explore that holistically, whether it's outside or indoors. What are the potential timelines? And the answer may be after some further study, depending on, there may be a differentiation between outdoor activities and indoor activities along the lines of what, Laura just discussed, the complexity of scheduling your inside groups, of sanitizing and being CDC compliant when, at some point, your facilities, unlike other times, are going to have to lie fallow, so to speak, in order to allow the people who have to clean it and get you where you're supposed to be compliant. They need time to do their job without outside groups and other people being there, right? I mean, as I understand it, in a normal set of circumstances, your buildings are running, if not 24/7, that's not a real exaggeration. They're under heavy use by the community. They're under heavy use, and now we're dealing with, the potential of outside groups coming in and using in off hours an indoor facility to which you're going to be returning children the next morning, when your custodial staff has the responsibility to disinfect and return that, facility to a condition that's acceptable for those kids to come in. So that I would imagine, I'm the lawyer, I'm not the logistician of your athletic usage, but I can imagine just that the casual observer would say that's going to present some challenges to us and potentially some additional costs. And how do you allocate that to your outside groups? Do they have the capacity to withstand that? How does that interplay with your policy? I mean, so those are things that we can get to study, reasonably quickly, but you also had a whole agenda of very critical academic issues that I think are going to be the immediate focus of your administration. So I think tempering expectations is a reasonable thing to talk about as well.
Right. I also think that just like everything else in the year 2020, we have to learn to do things in a different manner. So maybe we don't, maybe the Sachem Swim Club doesn't use the pool every single day. Maybe they use it certain times. And maybe we don't have a million basketball games going on at every single school on every single night like we tend to have. So I think that definitely opening the discussion, I guess now is the right time. But I mean, I don't want to sound like that person that sports is the end all be all, but I'm telling you that we got to get these kids back to everything that makes them normal because they're suffering.
Yeah, absolutely. And if that's a sentiment, obviously that would be something I think you'd have to involve your district athletic staff in pretty significantly too. I mean, there's a lot to be done on their end to let us know, what the facilities can and cannot withstand in the schedule that's permitted and the obligations that you have to remain compliant. I'm not sure how much discussion tonight is going to get you there, except the direction to say we want to get that going as quickly as possible and as broadly as possible, as best we can. And then let the professionals who deal with that for you make that as much of a priority as is possible under the constraints of dealing with the other issues that we've discussed tonight as well. Understanding that it's a priority, but getting to it when the time comes. And maybe I don't know, Mr. Superintendent, I didn't mean to overstep my bounds, but
No, you're exactly right. I'm just making the list. It's a couple pages long now, but that is what we're doing. That's what we signed up for. That's what we're attempting to do. I just wanted to mention, John, I think we went over the east. The high school gym, the floor is covered and filled with chairs for lunch. Is that correct? If my recollection?
A lot of the secondary buildings, the auxiliary gyms are utilized as cafeteria space, so they're not available for use.
Okay, but there might be other spaces, like I see the gym downstairs.
I mean, certainly considering outside use, I'm sure we can try to work with that if that was the board's direction. I have concerns about inside use because typical building use runs as late as 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Your custodial shift ends at 11 o'clock at night. There would be no time to clean the facility for the next morning. So that would be my concern about indoor use.
John, I don't know what the will of the board is, but just I hate saying no. So finding a way is kind of like my thing. Is if we told SIAG or the swim club, for example, you can rent it out, but we would need a security guard and we would need a custodian, and here is the cost.
Okay.
If they are willing to pay for that.
You have to keep in mind, yes, they are providing you additional revenue, but you still have to incur the expenditure. The expenditure budget is only so big. You can't grow the expenditure budget just because you're bringing in extra revenue. If you budgeted for X amount of custodians or X amount of facilities people, that's what the voters allowed you to do. So unless you amend the budget and change the budget, you can't make it bigger than the voter approved budget. You have to still stay within the constraints that the voters allowed, even if there's additional revenues coming in. So that is a balancing act you have to follow.
It seems like to me that the complexities of indoor is much greater than the complexities of using a big open field on the outdoor side. So the other thing I'm going to ask is if you have some time to meet with the Sachem soccer folks to at least see what the guidelines are for Long Island Junior Soccer and all the rules and regulations to return to play safely, so that at least it can come back to the board and we can at least discuss allowing them to return sooner, because the season is going to come and go. And the way soccer works is you have a fall season and a spring season, and that's what the people pay for. It's fall and spring. So if we could kind of work with that group and see if we can get them out there, and at the same time maybe look at the feasibility of an indoor plan. But I know that they've been waiting patiently, and there's a lot of kids that have been waiting patiently to get back on that field, to get back with their friends. So the other thing I'd ask, and I don't know where the board stands on that.
I'm with you. Does anyone have an issue with us exploring that? Okay.
The other thing, Chris, we might have to explore is, would the guidelines have to be the guidelines that we utilize for in-district sports?
Right. I would take the position that it's not only what they've organizationally embodied in their principles, but that we're responsible for enforcing what we would in our facilities, irrespective. Maybe are perfectly mirroring what we'd be responsible to enforce, but part of that conversation. And we've had very, very positive conversations with the group all throughout. I mean, we've had occasion to, express our shared desire to make sure that the kids get the benefit of that program, but also the constraints that we've had that have been imposed upon us by, the governor's executive orders and so forth. So these have been historically very positive conversations, and I'm sure that they will continue to be. But I think that, our obligation, as Mr. O'Keefe pointed out, would be that the restrictions that we're under have to align with what they have, and if not, theirs have to align them to ours.
Any other questions? Does anyone have any future agenda items? Please.
Ask about the high school guidance. I know.
Yes. Good.
I know students are waiting for their transcripts to send to their colleges for early acceptance, and I know they're being given a hard time by the guidance counselors that they're not even able to apply for their transcripts. So if that could be addressed and looked into.
I don't know who would do that, Chris.
We're on it. Thank you.
The other request I would have is that our next board meeting, if we can get an update on the remote learning, as the progress as to where we are and the steps we're taking to make it much, much better.
Certainly.
And I don't know when we talked about a special, so I don't know if that is going to be that quickly, but if there are steps being taken up to that point. I'm going to call one community member, and then I'm going to go back because there was one more thing on there, so I apologize. I missed it because I accidentally crossed it out. Stephanie Volpe, please.
Can I speak from here? It's quick.
Just because there's a microphone, and then the people can hear you from home. And if there's wipes there too, if you'd like.
You brought up something tonight that's somewhat new. So I was wondering if you're going to factor in PTA use for the buildings, because they're not allowed in right now. And they're bringing in programs and supports for our kids. So if you can bring outside in, you have to consider PTA.
100%.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last meeting, Meredith brought up community emails to the board. So you asked for a future agenda item if you want to discuss, and then we can have a conversation if you'd like about if they can't make it, emailing Allison and we can read it out to them.
Yeah, so because we're not really going to be fully in person the way we'd like to be for the unforeseeable future, I was hoping that we could propose something where the community members that would like to be heard could email. We could make it Allison, or we could make it the board president by a certain time the day prior to the meeting. So the agenda comes out on Tuesday. If we can have something put together where each community member, whether they can't make it because there's not enough seats, or they can't make it because they work late, or they can't make it because they do have a COVID risk that they just don't want to be in public yet, that they could actually send in a comment that somebody could read at a board meeting.
Chris, do we know a date of when this next executive order expires?
I believe it's October 4th. What's happened with the relaxation of the open meetings law, which is the reason that, there's two things. Obviously, the space limitations as to the number of individuals and the manner in which our audience and community is allowed to be present as we are. We have all these restrictions as the kids do and so forth. But also the restrictions on the open meeting law would actually, the limitation on the restrictions of the open meeting law. Normally, we have to do everything in public, everything with the public here, and all the things that happen with that. The governor, in his executive orders, has allowed us to do virtual meetings or these hybrid type of operations. Those executive orders can only be issued in 30-day increments. So each time he's issued it for 30 days. Sometimes that's been a little frustrating because the 30th day has fallen at like midnight before we have a board meeting scheduled, and we're scrambling to figure out whether we can or can't be live or so forth. So right now, I believe it's October 4th. I'll double check the date, but I believe that's the expiration. Historically, it seems that the governor is still extending those orders as long as COVID presents a risk. So I can't guarantee that it would be extended. But to Meredith's point, there is nothing that would prohibit us from doing what Meredith has proposed. Some districts that I represent do allow some form of alternate mechanism for individuals not in attendance to present something to the board, have a cutoff date and say, hey, can we have my comment or my question addressed in the board meeting? Sometimes what'll happen is 5 or 10 people will ask the same question. So the board will address all of those kind of with one response, with the understanding that, it's not getting read in the entirety. So sometimes the board treats it by subject matter. Sometimes the board treats it by individual question. And sometimes, they give individual responses as the superintendent has described, and endeavors, I know the whole staff endeavors to do when available, just give the person a direct answer. But if it's a mechanism for the board meeting that you want to publish, it's a thing that is not illegal. It's up to you as to whether you want to. You control your meetings. You control the way that you allow public comment to be made. So, it's available to you if you should choose to do so.
Anybody else?
I mean, listen, I have no problem for purposes of transparency. If community members have questions and they need them answered for purposes of making decisions about their child's education, I would have no problem with it. If we can consolidate it and do it the way Chris said.
Jim?
Chris, just a question on that. If some people come up here and they want to discuss, a personal issue of their own kids. Now, if they wanted to do that by an email and they're not here, are we going to be reading that
No,
family's name?
I think we would always take care, as we do in every board meeting, if something got into an area where it was a privacy issue. And I guess we'd have to figure out the mechanism to say, how do we distinguish between those meetings, those emails, which are the typical ones? Somebody sends an email to an administrator or to a teacher that they want just an answer to. They're not expecting it to be read at a board meeting. So we could probably have to work on how we would roll out the notification to people who really more of a substitute for the type of public comment
That's
at a
what I
board
was
meeting.
proposing. That
Exactly.
somebody
Right,
who
exactly.
wanted to be here in this seat and open up their comment to the public would send that particular comment in because for whatever reason, they couldn't actually be in that
But I think
seat.
Mr. Kiernan is sharing something
not-
that we've experienced in the past, which is, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Right,
you.
we
Jim,
get a
start
bunch
talking.
of other emails.
Right.
with my kid this
But even
and that.
sometimes somebody comes up to make public comment about a particular personnel member or something else that implicates somebody's privacy rights, or even not knowing that we can't discuss a particular student's, like an IEP. Somebody has a question about their IEP and services that a child is receiving under an IEP. We'd never discuss that in public. We would invite the parent to come and have a particular discussion about it because their child has privacy rights associated with that. So we don't want somebody in that circumstance. We would have to address that email privately, even if that person presents it as something that was a question for the board in this portal, let's say.
Right.
But I guess, certainly to the extent that it's not something that has those concerns, Jim, then it would be appropriate to.
So all the
treat
more
with it
reason
that
why
way.
it would actually be beneficial is because if somebody came up here and just started spewing their kid's IEP, we'd have to stop them when they've already
And
open their
we
mouth,
had different
but on an
examples
email,
of
we
that
can
happen
tell
at
them
board
we're
meetings
sorry.
where we have to inform the community member who's making the comment, look, that's not a topic that we would typically discuss in public. Allow us to treat with that privately, and we think
But
it's
that's
more
also
appropriate.
different because that's their own kid's IEP, and I'm not saying it. They're saying.
No, well,
Stop.
sure, a parent has the right to waive their privacy rights, but we don't.
Yeah.
Even if the parent's sitting right there, even when the parent waives the privacy right, we are still constrained by the privacy right. So it's a complicated thing, which is why we try not to engage in that discussion for the most part, because even though the parent has the right to talk about their child in any forum or any manner that they want, we can address it adequately in public.
I think it, that issue launches a couple of other issues. So my question, it's not a question. My statement is, if we're going to go there, and I understand why you want to do that, and the transparency reasons, and to get the community involved as well as they should. Who's going to be the person that's going to go through all these emails, make these decisions on which ones come forward? So process is going to be a major part if that's going to work. Otherwise, you can't just say, well, the clerk will take care of it. I mean, she'll get, 1,000 emails and she's got certainly other things to do. So we have to consider process on that.
Bill?
I'm sorry. Just if we were going to consider something like this, I would just recommend that we would limit the amount of emails that we would entertain. I think you can have speaking slots for the people who actually show up and get here early and get a seat in the room, but you might want to limit it to maybe 3 or 4 emails, and the other people have to queue back up on the next meeting, or else we could be here for some very long nights. with hundreds of emails coming in. When people don't have anything that they have to sort of put forth, skin in the game, the emails come pretty easily, I think. Just something to consider.
My only issue is that, first off, I'm never going to read the email with the passion of the person that actually wrote it. That's just not, I mean, I could put a voice on, but it's never going to be the same.
Right. And I don't think that it's meant that. It's more meant out of, I mean, we had a woman here tonight with her children's severe medical conditions. Maybe she doesn't want to go out. Maybe she doesn't go to the grocery store. Like in this world right now, there are people that do not leave their house still, but that doesn't mean that their voice doesn't count in this community and shouldn't be heard. Yeah. And that's more the reason why I'm doing it. I don't want to see anybody have to sit out in their car and wait just so that they can be heard. I don't want to see a mother with fragile children feel that she needs to get here to this board meeting and possibly bring home germs because she needs to be heard. And I get that we will never read it with the passion that the parent wrote it with. But there's a variety of reasons why community members sit in that seat. And there's a variety of reasons why community members don't sit in that seat. And just, because somebody is maybe too scared to sit there and speak up and then have whatever they said or didn't say and didn't wipe the mic and didn't whatever critique the next day on social media. There's a variety of reasons. So for all those reasons, I think that it would just be best if somebody could just, and you're right, we do have to limit it because then otherwise people would be sending us, I mean, look at the volume of emails we get right now.
But let me just ask a question, and I apologize to interrupt. You can finish.
Okay.
But so who is going to be determining where we've cut the line? Who's going to say this is the first three? Who's going to say these are the three that we read?
It would have to be agenda items only.
Okay.
And I guess you'd have to put in there a reason why you couldn't be here.
I mean, so then we're going to determine, I just think that's a very slippery slope of denying people their email because they weren't first or they weren't for various reasons of, you weren't sick enough or you didn't really have a reason. You just wanted to stay home. Like, I don't think it's fair. And I think the people that show up, they show up and they do it. And anybody else, you answer emails, Laura answers emails, we all answer emails. I send some to Chris, I send some to Erin, I send some to John. Everybody answers emails with direct questions. I really think that that's the way that we're doing it is honestly more than fair and equal for everybody. And the second we start picking and choosing who we're going to read for, because I know that person, let's make sure we know, we read for them. I just think that's a slippery slope that I'm nervous to go down. Yes.
I just have a statement, like a question and a statement. The public comment is part of our policy. It's not a New York State policy that we have to allow public comment.
There's no legal obligation to allow public
So
comment.
then would we have to amend our policy saying that we're allowing electronic public comment?
Right. So what some districts have done, and I forget whether you've adopted this sort of model, one that we had promulgated at some point, I'll have to go back and check the record, is in the COVID environment, talk about restricting a policy amendment or a policy change to, we're in a COVID environment that has caused our board meetings to be conducted in a different manner than they would be traditionally. And in light of those concerns, will allow for some kind of restricted thing. I certainly would recommend defining it in some fashion if you're going to do that and having an understanding and an agreement as to how you want to limit it. I mean, I understand everybody's concerns, access and transparency, and also the concern that it leads the community to think that you're picking and choosing the ones that you like and don't like. And then to Bill's point, if you're not picking and choosing, then you're potentially here until 4 a.m, reading every email. And most of them are ones which could be dealt with under the normal course of business, which is somebody sends an email, you respond to the email and you give them their answer. So I guess, to your point, Sarah, the environment has caused some boards to adopt a resolution that says, to the extent that we need to abrogate any policy that we have or amend any policy that we have in order to be compliant with an executive order, deem it to be so during the period that the executive orders are in place. I mean, similarly, if you come to consensus about it, you could have a resolution that says that our policy regarding meetings is amended to allow comments in the way that we agree that they should be made.
Chris, would there be anything like, so just like everything else right now, if we try it and it doesn't work, we could say, okay, we tried it, it didn't work. We got 3,000 emails and we can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could do something like that, and if it the day one, you get 3,000 emails. This is unwieldy. We're not going to be able to manage this and conduct the essential business of the board. You could make that decision too. I mean, it's all healthy discussion to have, and you'll decide, what parameters you want to set on it.
I would be okay with trying it, maybe setting up a separate email like sachemboe@sachem.edu, something where it's like it's not going right to Allison or me, or because then I don't want to be responsible for going through them and picking and choosing, and I don't want Allison doing it. And then all of a sudden she's the topic of conversation on Sachem Moms and how bad of a person she is because she didn't pick somebody's email. Like I don't want that for her either.
I would think maybe we could try it and see how many we get. I mean, I don't know that there's 3,000 people out there that want to have their issue. And also, if it's an issue that just keeps coming up over and over again, that we can reply, as we all do, to an email, then we just reply to that email and say, it has to be an agenda item. It can't be like we have 2 public comments, one for agenda, one for everything else. This one would only be open to agenda items.
I apologize. When does the agenda go live, Allison?
So typically by the Tuesday close of business before the meeting.
So then they would have basically Wednesday morning until what time?
Right, that's what I was.
But then now we're we're getting 3,000 emails or whatever it is. Right. And now we're going through them and be right before 7:30. Who's going to be responsible for a 12-hour period of making sure that happens? And we're setting the agenda and we're making sure everything else is ready. I'm all for it.
So
and I again, like I said, I don't want to say no.
Right.
I just don't know the logistics of how it would work.
So if you said like we could set up a separate email, I will volunteer my time to be the one to read the emails and then actually read the emails here. And like I said, do a dry run. If it works the first time, great. If I get 3,000 emails and I'm sitting in the parking lot at 7:28 trying to finish reading emails, then I guess that wouldn't work. And we can say it wouldn't work. But again, we owe it to our community to keep trying whatever we can.
Yeah. Jim?
How many members of Sachem Moms are there?
Over 11,000.
Good luck.
I'm all for trying it. I'm all for transparency. I asked for the camera. I was told no, and then all of a sudden we have a camera for like the cheap. I was told it was going to be $25,000, and all of a sudden we have YouTube set up with a little camera set up on top of it. So I'm all for transparency, and if we could try it and it works, great. If it doesn't, I don't know how anybody else feels. And if it doesn't, we tried it, and that's where it ended. Does anyone have an issue with trying it?
Emails would go to Allison, and then she would kind of sort through them. And is that what
I
we're
can
gonna-
certainly speak with Mr. Renda about setting up, like we discussed, a Sachem BOE at sachem.edu. And
Maybe understanding that it's the board direction that you really want to limit that to comment on agenda items for people who are constrained from being here in person. I can work with the superintendent and Allison to draft a statement for the website publicizing that, which also sets forth the expected limitations for the reason that you would be sending an email to that address, but also cautioning folks that, look, if you have a personal issue about your kid, or you have a problem of this nature that isn't related to the board agenda items, please direct that to these other appropriate places where they're better dealt with directly, individually, or however else we want to phrase it.
So I would have no problem if we kept those parameters so that at least if somebody can't be here and it is an agenda item, I would have no problem with doing some of that.
And am I accurate just in terms of the information to the public that that's something that's limited to, the period of time during which we're operating under the COVID protocols?
If we ever get out of it.
So while you were saying that, 3 minutes also. So like they can't write, War and Peace. They have to have a 3-minute.
Good. Okay. Our next meeting will be held on Wednesday, September 30th at 7:30. Can I please have a motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing collective negotiations and matters pertaining to a particular student? Motion by Mr. Scavo, seconded by Ms. Slattery. All in favor? Opposed? Good night, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, you didn't get a real one.